This is the second session of the FSBA School Board Association Master Board Training. And the date is March the 10th, and it is 10 a.m.
So we're going to call this FSBA Master Board Training Session number 2 to order at 10:05. It's Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, and I am going to turn this over to
April Griffin.
Yes, that's okay. Listen, I know that y'all are,
I'm like trying to read
there's coffee and I did make another cake. So that'll get us through,
April, you are.
through, I tell you, I have some time, so that's one of them.
It is.
So I'm gonna do it a little different than I normally would. Normally we would talk about the agreements you made and progress and all that kind of stuff, and a little bit about how things are going. But I want to do this and do that last because I don't want to go over our time since you're back to back to back. And so we'll go through what we're going to do today, and then we'll go over and reflect a little bit about what has been going on since our last time. Is that okay?
Say more about what you mean by agreements, because I think those are important. But I agree with you not wanting to spend a lot of time on it yet.
Yeah, they are important, but I think that after we talk about communication and all, it might be a better discussion to have at the end. The other thing is I wanted to tell you, this is the second, this is the first on-site, the first 4-hour. There's 3 that we're doing. This one is about communication. The next one is about emotional intelligence, kind of reading people. And the third one will be about protocols. Because I know that you wanted to talk about your protocols, but I think that we need to talk about communication styles and the other stuff first, because it'll help your discussion when you're going through your protocols. And since y'all are doing one a month, it won't be a long time in between that we'll forget what we talked about. So I think that that's the plan, if that's okay with y'all. Yeah. Okay. And then I saw this quote on, and from our discussion last time, I saw this quote on Facebook, and I didn't make a slide of it, but I did write it down. And you know, everybody brings your past and your present and hopes for your future when you come into a group. When you sit at the dining room, you can't separate one thing from the other. But you can choose on what to focus on when you're here. So I wanted to read this, and I think that I'm going to start putting this in all the trainings. Every time I go anywhere. You can go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. That's C.S. Lewis. And you know, the things that come into a group, you can't change what you bring, but you can change what you focus on and how you choose to use it. So we're talking about communication today, and I'm going to make the blocks move for you. Maybe. Oh, I got to turn it on. I'm going to go back and make the blocks move. They'll move eventually. So today's what we're going to. Oh, look, it just moved. We're going to talk about the governance model and how that plays in your work as a governance team. We're going to do a Myers-Briggs assessment, and you're going to learn about your communication. We're going to talk about how each style works together and the problems that can come up and the good things. And then we're going to talk about principles of effective communication. And I have not a practice thing, but I have a formula that could help you in your dealings with each other in confrontation and non-confrontational. If you'll take a little time, it can help. So that's what we're going to do today.
Can I just toss in? I'm a tough audience, and I love that report model that you used last time, and I have referred to that in so many places and spaces since then, and how it's helped me understand that was exceptionally useful, so I want to commend you on
So
that.
thank you, and you're going to get another group of stuff that can help and
I
put
also
in your
mixed it
toolbox.
with my leadership team.
Oh, really?
So it really drove conversation for a good hour on understanding how we thought, how we made decisions. So it was, I second that.
Yeah, like, and
it was
I'm
fun.
tough too.
Well, I did the thing with, I took a copy and did it with my husband and my oldest son. And the communication thing we're going to do today, we're going to do with our whole family, because we work together and we have a business. And although they know each other, I mean, they were born together, you know, this can help that. So we're in the sunshine, and what that means is that you cannot talk about anything that you're going to be voting on in this room today, okay? And your humble attorney's here to keep you out of trouble, but I think that you can stay out of trouble yourselves. I have total faith and confidence in you. So we're going to go over the governance model real quick. And you've all seen this before, but it's important to understand how communication leads to all of these things. So the vision of your school district, what is your vision? Do you know what the vision for your school district is? Excellence for all students. Do you know what your mission statement is?
Serve all students with excellence.
That's what your mission statement is?
No, it's a vision. I don't know what the vision is. I just know the vision.
Well, your vision statement is something that 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago you're looking forward to. And effective school boards, effective leadership teams establish a clear vision with their community and within their district. And there's expectations that go along with that vision. And all of these things lead to student achievement. So if you have a strong vision statement, our Alachua County's is at the back of the dais. Every school you go into, it's on a plaque. Now, whether everybody in the district knows or not, it's there. They could know if they chose.
Well, and we are about to undergo that process because we already have on the calendar a day to start our strategic planning. And at least in my experience, that's where I don't know what your plan is, but that's where you start, is the
Right.
mission and the vision. Everything falls out of that.
Right.
So I anticipate we're less than a month away from
That first-
crafting.
Yeah.
And that's
That
where
this
you're
moment.
leading towards. Good, that's good. Accountability is taking responsibility for the good and the bad outcomes in the district. There's nothing worse than passing the buck, because the buck stops where?
Right there.
Well, but it also stops with you. And, you know, we always like to say the good things, but owning up to when it's not going exactly perfect leads to trust. And people out there know what's, you know, so it can be helpful. Policies are what drives your work. They set forth the purposes and organization and the parameters in which your school district is going to work. And we talk about in part of the trainings about thinking outside the box and what kind of box do you have your people in, which I might throw in when we do the protocol part. So policies are important. Are you a Neola district?
Yes.
Okay. Good, because that way you know, I mean, somebody else vets everything. But don't be afraid to have policies that are your own if something comes up in your district. And, you know, everybody's unique. Neola covers what everybody has to do. And so, yeah.
And I'd like to charge our superintendent with making sure that our leadership understands the policies, because, you know, I've had some conversation with some principals who said something, and I said, no, I don't know if that's within our policy. And he said, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, you're never wrong if you stay within the policies. When you go outside that parameter, that's when you kind of get yourself into a gray area.
And are your policies readily available on your website?
Yes.
Are you a board docs district?
Yes.
So what Alachua County did was linked all the policies are on board docs. It's so easy, the system is easy to find.
But not everybody knows that. We have it, it's easy if you know where to go and what to look for. If you don't, so I guess the point is, we need to put that out in the district more clearly for people to access, because I don't think everybody knows where to easily find it.
Yes, and it is difficult. I was just talking to somebody this last week that has a presentation to do, does not work for the district, and wanted to know about some, policies and stuff. So I sat down at my computer and I pulled up the website and I walked her through, where to find it. And she's like, everything I need is here. And I'm like, yes, I am.
Okay, I want to read our vision.
Okay.
Educate and inspire every student to be successful, and the mission is to serve all students with excellence.
Okay. So y'all were kind of right around in there. Yeah, that's good.
Sorry, I don't keep interrupting you, but that said, Dr. Moore just completed a document, really good document, by the way, consistent with his 90-day plan, in which he mentions, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the kind of vagueness and insufficiency of that. I don't remember if you said that or that was just my thought. But that doesn't quite address with specificity what we're really up to, what really matters to us. And forgive me if I've attributed that to you and it's not there.
It didn't directly state that, but that's one of the symptoms of having a loosely written mission.
Yeah. And I thought there was
Very
something
hard
there,
to
but it might have just been my thought.
define. So
Yeah.
findings are very, very interesting.
Well, because, your action plan has to have, things that you can quantitate. It has to have things that you know that you're reaching, attaining. Your strategic plan, action plan, same. Look, see, they're moved. Community leadership. This isn't always asking for things from your community. It is also kind of like what Mara was saying, using your community to get information out. If you have a big policy change or whatever, go to your Rotary, go to all of those places, go to the administrators and let them disseminate the knowledge for you. And asking is part of it. I believe you have a referendum coming up. You're going to be engaging the community in ways that you had never thought. Do you have a referendum now?
We do.
You do, okay, so you're renewing it, okay.
Yeah, the existing
Updated.
one, we have one already slated to be on the ballot. That's what we're working on.
But you have an update that you want to continue, but update, is that right? And then relationships. Hello.
Hello.
Relationships with the governance model aren't just the relationships between board members. They're the relationships between board members and the superintendent and the staff, the board members and the staff, the community, and everybody that has anything to do with the school district and what you're trying to do. Relationships are very, very, very important because that's what people see when they watch you. And people watch you. So when you are in a situation, a board meeting or out in the community, and you're not civil and just nice to each other, or you bicker at the dais, or you bring all that other stuff that you bring into your work, people notice. and trust goes away.
I walked in at such an interesting time. I'd like to apologize first. My son needed to have my mom come over and say him today, so I had to wait for her. But this is an interesting topic and something that I have to add to when you're ready for input.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, it's been interesting in my time on the board. I joined the board in 2016, and it's been suggested to me by, I've done a lot of interviews lately, and I spoke off the record with a couple people, and they've asked me why Laura and I seem to have such a difficult time getting along. And, I've thought about that a lot. And I've never spoken on the record about why I've had such an issue. And I've thought about whether or not to do that, but I thought this was an appropriate place to do it. It had come to my attention that there was a rumor in the community that I was having an affair with the previous superintendent. And it had come to my attention through several other elected officials that perhaps Mrs. Zork had thought that that was the case and had shared that with them. It was upsetting to me. It was upsetting to my family. There was then a school district employee who targeted me online, cyberbullying me for about 6 months every other day, saying some very inappropriate things about me. It was very uncomfortable for me as a human being and for my daughter, who at the time was in middle school, who was approached about it at her school. To be honest, during that time as a board, we really didn't come together. We were very fractured. None of my fellow board members really publicly stood up and said, this isn't okay, cyberbullying is not okay, we're not going to be okay with anyone treating one of our fellow board members in that way, regardless of how we feel about them, because we are a board together. In coming kind of full circle for me, as a member of this board, I think it's important for me to share that, and just out of respect for my other board members, because I haven't spoken publicly about why I have felt so uncomfortable around Mrs. Zork. That is the reason why.
If she's going to bring this up, there's been tension since day one with Mrs. Justice. She's, from day one, I feel like she has negatively commented on any and everything that I would practically bring up as a suggestion from day one. I think through the investigation that she went through, because she was...
I didn't go through an investigation.
An investigation that she and with the sheriff's office went through, it was brought to my attention that Mrs. Justice thought it was me that was online.
That is also untrue.
That come to be false. It was someone else, and I'm not going to take the blame for those rumors because I had nothing to do with those rumors. If people in the community talk, people in the community are going to talk. So I'm not going to take that information, what she said, and put it on me. I mean, her actions are her actions, and it has nothing to do with me.
I'm trying to form my comments.
And yes, I do feel very uncomfortable in front of Mrs. Justice too, because I know that she was looking at trying to insinuate that it was me who was doing the Twitter when I hardly ever am on Twitter. I'm on Facebook.
That is not the case. I've never insinuated that it was Mrs. Zork.
Well, there's public records to that.
Well, I said at the very beginning that we all bring stuff with us when we come, because we're humans. You can't separate the outside from the inside. What you choose to do with it is your choice. And remember the first time, the only person in the whole United States of America and the universe that you have control over is yourself. That's it.
That's a wonderful point. So to your point, last year when all of this was going on in the spring, it kind of came to a head, and I chose to not at that time go public. There were many people who wanted me to stand up and speak out, but I felt that it was important for the school district to stay focused, that we needed to continue down the path of finding out what we were going to do with our previous superintendent and then how we were going to hire a new one. And out of respect for my family and my fellow board members and the chaos that we were in, I did step back. But you're right, we do take responsibility for how we behave. And you know, when I was driving in, I saw that Laura's car on the sticker says our trusted leader, and I don't trust Mrs. Stork. I do not trust Laura. And that has been very difficult in working together on a board. I had hoped after the last session we had that we may come together as a board during our workshop and perhaps work together a little bit better. The previous board meeting was better, but the one before that, directly after our first training, was not. There were a couple times when I did not feel that I was given the same respect as my fellow board members by the chair.
Sometime, I'm going to get to you in just a second. When you're doing this work, it's not about you. So if everything that happens you feel is directly aimed at you, I'm talking to all of you, everything is directly, you are putting yourself above everybody else in this district.
I don't speak for myself when I speak here, I speak for my constituents.
There's a way that you can talk to people and say, I'm choosing to work together because that is what's best for the children. Leave it alone.
Well, and I've done it many times on the dais. Mrs. Stork has had a difficult time as chair in the past 2 years at times, and I've tried to be helpful, to help with the agenda, to keep us on track. I've not taken the opportunities that I had to really, you know, make it about us.
April, the whole thing is, yes, I'm up for re-election, and Mrs. Justice might be up for re-election, and I feel like she's using this moment as her platform.
Oh no, I just don't know what the purpose of this is if we're not going to be honest. You were just talking about honesty and relationships, so.
Conversation that she's having, because it's, you know, she's insinuating that 2 meetings ago that I wasn't fair to her. Well, to be a good chair, I have to be fair to all the board members, and it wasn't fair that every single board member put an item for discussion, and I allotted time for each board member that had put an item, and then during the discussion, Mrs. Justice said, I didn't put an item, I want to add an item.
No, that is not the case, but I'm not going to argue with you about
I
something.
was not going to allow that to happen.
Okay.
You can go back and watch the video. That was exactly it. And then Mrs.
It's not the
Justice.
point. This is about honesty and transparency in the board getting along.
Mrs. Justice tried to put the superintendent on the spot, and I had to stop it and say, no surprises for the superintendent.
It wasn't a surprise.
He's telling you he's not prepared to talk about
He
it.
did not say that.
And I was trying to be respectful to the superintendent. He point blank said, I have to look into this, I'm not prepared to give you an answer. And she kept asking basically the same question in a different way. So, you know, I'm not going to apologize for that. When we, you know, during the training before, we said we're going to respect each other. And if we have one board member that keeps disrespecting other board members and our superintendent, I'm not going to allow it.
I think that I'm trying to, like I said, think through what I want to say. All of this, all of what y'all just talked about is toxic to the work of the district.
But who's bringing it up?
But I want to...
It's toxic, you know,
It's really good whether we talk about it or not. It's just FYI.
It's, yes.
and when
It is, if it exists. Remember, and we're going to do this right now.
I need coffee.
And I have my name for comment.
Oh, yes, tell me, what did you want?
One of the things that Mrs. Evans mentioned was said that during this investigation that board members didn't come forth and didn't say anything. She said that she was uncomfortable that board members didn't say anything publicly about it. This board member didn't say anything publicly about that particular investigation because it was under investigation.
That's true.
And when it was cleared, this board member did not receive the information about what the final outcome was of it until long after the employee was not here anymore. So as far as communication with investigations, Dr. Moore was not here at the time. Dr. Moxley was here, and I did request of the superintendent to keep board members informed of ongoing investigations, what they are, what the nature is of it, and of course when they're completed, what the outcome is of them. We often have a responsibility to respond to certain investigations. We don't get involved in the day-to-day operations. But if something like this were of need for us to consider speaking forward of, or speaking publicly on, board members in the past have not had that opportunity to do that. So since it was just mentioned now, I will say personally that in my view of this particular incident, this is not disregarding Mrs. Justice's feelings on how she felt about it. But I did not think that it was online bullying. That was my opinion. I did not think that this employee, I think this employee said things that were inappropriate. But I did not consider two tweets to be...
When your 14-year-old daughter comes home because someone showed her a Twitter message about her mother's panties being around her ankles or being underneath someone's desk, that is, thank God, I am such a wonderful husband and such a strong faith that I was able to get through that. Because if I had been emotionally unstable, my father was very ill at the time, that's enough to break someone. And my daughter has suffered serious emotional harm because of it.
I know how public information that is brought forth unnecessarily to demean someone's reputation on purpose can hurt someone. If there's anyone who knows that, it is me. And that's not what I said. To diminish your feelings about what was said. What I said was I did not believe that to be bullying. There's a difference between being inappropriate and bullying. And I think even in society now, we are overusing the word bullying versus bothering. Now, was that appropriate? No, I do not. But there is a true bullying where there is should there have been an investigation and legal proceedings for that, for the police to get involved. The question is, was it criminal? That does not, but this is my point. This is my opinion. I do not believe that that was bullying to the point of necessary legal investigation or criminal charges. I mean, that I do not believe that at all.
Thank God no one got hurt.
I'm going to bring this around.
That's why I did not. I want to respond to that as the board member. I did not respond because,
Well, it
there were
still
certain
should be an
things.
ongoing legal, we don't know what that employee is going to do. I mean, we don't know if that employee is going to sue the district, sue us, so I prefer not to talk about it.
I mean, the investigation is not over, but I understand what you're saying.
What I want to say is, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
None of that should have happened from a personal and just in the realm of anything good coming out of any of that. Trust, we talked about last time, is so hard to get back. once it is lost. You cannot discount somebody else's feelings and how what has happened makes them feel. That's just,
Well, how do you think it makes me feel knowing that she's thinking that it's me who's out here doing this?
I just said,
Right.
everybody's
Exactly.
feelings.
And,
But
to the
remember,
point that they're getting a subpoena from Twitter to see who's doing it. I mean,
I'm gonna read this again because you missed this quote. And I think that we need to listen to the words and take this to heart. The elephant in the room is going to stay the elephant in the room, and we're going to beat this pony until it bleeds, and nothing's going to come of it. Because that's your feelings, and your feelings, and your feelings. What you choose to do with what you're feeling and how you choose to work together is totally up to you. 5 individuals, it's up to you. I'm going to leave him out of this for right now. So let me give you this quote, because you missed it, but I think it needs to be repeated. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. That's C.S. Lewis. And if you think about that, with all of this just stuff that's going on in the past, and maybe currently, what you choose, saying it again, what you choose to do is up to yourself. So you can choose when you come into a meeting, you can choose to come into that meeting and be focused on what you're going to do, and nothing is being said that's about you. And you can do the business of the district. And after the meeting, if you feel like somebody said something, or if something was aimed at you, go to that person and talk it out. Which we're going to talk about right now. This is just, I was going to do this at the very end, and this is part of the lesson that we won't be doing because we're going to be doing protocols. So, but I think that it's necessary. So in the last session that we do, it's about thinking out of the box and how your language and how your communication and how everything needs to be out of the little box that we put each other in. You can say and you can do whatever you want from the dais. But let me tell you what, people are watching you. And people are learning if they're going, or considering if they're going to trust you. Not only with their schools, but with the most precious thing that they have in the world, which is their children. And now you're asking them, well, you've been asking them, but you're asking them to trust you again with money. Typically, those things pass. Typically. But if all they see, every time they log into your meetings, is y'all bitching and moaning at each other, and sniping it, I'm sorry, I didn't
but
curse.
I don't think that's the case.
Just let me finish. If you come in and you sit down and you do the business and you're courteous to each other and you call it, if you want to call each other by your last names, that's what you do. You call each other by your first names, I don't care. But you treat everybody the same and everybody gets to speak and no outside political, if you're running for office, none of that comes in. People are going to say, well, man, they're really focused on what is going on in the district. And then when you get off of the dais and you're not on TV and you go back in your office and you need to talk about something, do it. Don't be afraid to speak to each other. And as long as you're not asking for somebody's opinion about something that's coming up in the future, you can speak to each other. I was going to write y'all notes and thank you for our time. And I called and I said, if I send them to the office, will they get them? And I was told that that would be public record and that everybody would see what I said. I didn't write y'all notes. That is
Ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous.
I think it's
It's
pushing it
ridiculous
to a
because
point.
it is too over the top.
And I
It's
think that
absolutely
y'all are
ridiculous.
nervous and it's hurting.
We're not the
No, no,
one
no,
who
no,
made that
we have to
decision.
know this.
We're
Someone
getting that
asked-
from legal.
Someone literally, April, someone asked for everything in Mara's possessions from a meeting during a discussion. Someone, but still, I mean, to have that be a public record, everything in your possession?
It was about a specific issue when it was a document I was looking at, if we're referring to the same thing.
Right.
It was a specific document that I referenced in the meeting that that person wanted to know what I referenced, so public records requested it. Checked with me to see if that was what I was referring to. We went back and forth a couple of times and restored it. That's all.
Well,
I
people have
agree
every right to
because
do
I
that.
have even
Of course
been
they
told
do.
that, cards, like Christmas cards, they're all subject, it's just ridiculous. Thank you cards from people, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
That
The
is
need here
a
in
level,
this district is not like it is in other districts.
it's a level of scrutiny that is
Ridiculous.
beyond
We invited
what,
it.
but
No, we didn't.
think about
We
why
can say no, Christmas cards are not public record, sorry. Thank you cards are not public record, sorry, that's not,
you're doing it again.
no, but
But see, this is why, if you're doing this, and, people are going to be listening to this.
we can have, but then we don't have the conversation. If we don't have a conversation, then we're not transparent. If we have a conversation,
Yeah, let's take 5 minutes. And then we'll come back to this. We're gonna go on and then because this is just wrapping up and we're leaving that discussion. So,
I'll go get Dr.
the governance model, look at this, and we talked about all of them. What do you believe are your strengths of the vision, accountability, policy, community leadership, and relationships? What are your strengths? Let's talk about some good things for a minute.
As a team or as an individual?
Well, it says as a team.
Okay. I think we all are here for the right reasons. I think everybody has the same vision to help the kids in our district
Okay.
and to help overcome some things that we've had in our past that we need to overcome. I think we've gotten to that place as a team. I don't see the division. I think people tend to put that aside and focus on their work.
Good.
And I think that we're all being accountable for our actions, and I see all board members doing their homework when they come to the class,
Okay, good.
which is nice, because I haven't always seen that in the past. I'm not saying this board, but I'm saying in history, sometimes people don't come prepared or do their homework. I feel like my fellow board members are prepared in their meetings.
Well, and that's because they're focused. Right. Anybody else?
I think we have good community leadership. I complimented the board at our last board meeting. They've done a great job of getting out and being at events. In previous years, when Laura and I joined the board, other board members weren't as engaged. So we would end up being out at things, and there's so many things to go to. That's difficult to get everywhere sometimes, and you can run yourself right. I mean, I'm sure you know that. So it's been nice to work with a team of people who are actively out at things and representing the board rather than just themselves. So I've appreciated that. I think that's been a big shift since this board came together.
Hopefully you will get, and I don't know if you do this or not, but you'll get to the point where you're divvying up instead of one person trying to do everything. And you have an event, and it might be that that Mara goes to one and you go to the other, and we're dividing and conquering. But I will caution you with the community leadership thing that don't dismiss what the board needs to do. to go to an event. I know at this time, especially when, the elections are coming up, people want to go to everything, and I get that. But I do believe that if you say, I wish I could come, but we have a school board workshop, or we have something, then choose to be at what you were elected to be. It sets a course, and it sends a message to everybody that they're important, but this is important also. So I just, we have a county commission, and they did a grade book for them and how many meetings they missed. And it was shocking, because my board, nobody missed our meetings. Nobody missed our workshops unless they were dying or bleeding on the side of the road, because it was important. But the county commission, or they're late. They come in, and if people don't think that they feel like what they're doing is important. So, yeah.
Well, April, we can all call in and have bells now.
She gave us bells for Christmas. When Sherry had a hip replacement and she used to use a bell every time she wanted to talk, so then for Christmas she gave everyone a little bell.
Oh, so you ding, and so there's no lights, but you bring a little...
Well, if you're on the phone, you can ding.
Oh, I see. Well, calling in is perfect if you have a policy.
Well, and we do. And to be honest, this board has been very good about everyone coming to board meetings. It's not
So-
an issue.
Well, anything else before we move on? Any strengths?
Visions are strength.
Vision?
We all have
I think commitment. I think everybody on this board is, despite periodic distractions, is committed to the work of the board in the district.
Good.
And people in it.
I also think that we're really good about reviewing policy, because the policy's up there. And I think going over some policies that, we just instituted a new policy, and I think, we're kind of clear on being very, very careful with policies in our district. And, I've heard from the grapevine that, those 5 women in their policies, but you know what? Those are policies that...
I think that's such a good point, because there were times when we would do something or something would be brought, and then all of a sudden we found out it was in violation of a policy, or is there a policy? So I think we're more lined up with, is there a policy regarding this? What does it say? How does it need to be altered, and being adaptable, being willing to do that?
This is not quite in the area of strengths, but somewhere may fit into this conversation, and I'm not sure where. So I'm going to let you direct that. Because I think the strength is the commitment, is the dedication. We have added innumerably more meetings than the past board. I mean, we meet all the time. We do work outside of meetings all the time. And that's been noticed and commended by the community, whether they agree with us or not. There is clear dedication and commitment among the people on the board. That said, the two things consistent with this, what your roles and what your strengths are, something that we haven't yet discussed that may come up. We have expertise in different areas. Terry's an expert on STEAM stuff, I'm not. Tiffany's into art stuff, I'm not. I'm into a lot of equity work. We have different lanes in which we are more knowledgeable, that we enjoy, that we are dedicated to, and we're knowledgeable about. We haven't really discussed where we empower our other board members to take a lead on particular areas and where we might step back, which is consistent with where we show up and where we don't. I don't know if that's a part of this, that's one thing. The second part is, what we haven't talked about in this is social media. And I don't know if we'll get to that. Okay, because I gotta tell you, ever since being elected on any public space, I almost never show up. I won't do it in public spaces. On my personal page I do, but I typically refrain from any kind of political comments on those since I was on the board, because I don't know who's looking. I've noticed that that's not consistent for us as a board, and I'd like that to be something we talk about.
Okay.
Can we talk about the spaces part for a second? Or not?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've mentioned this before, and since this is a nice place to have an honest conversation. I would like to have an honest conversation with you about some of my concerns about that quickly. May I share them with you or no?
I will actually like to let April take us where we need to go in this meeting rather than going down a rabbit hole for the
I
moment.
don't know if it's a rabbit hole.
Let's hold that,
Great.
and when we, at the end, we're going to do something, and that might be the right place for you to bring that
Thank
up,
you.
okay? The culture of the district is what we've been talking about this whole time. And the district culture is driven by you and your actions and your policies and the way you treat your superintendent. It trickles down. If you've ever walked into a school and you just get a feeling that something is a little off, that's the culture. And you need to, I'm just bringing this up, we're not going to really talk about it a lot, except for the fact that you can't change things in a positive direction if your culture is not positive and not, and there's a feeling of eggshells where people are afraid to talk. If you've been in the school, the principal says, this is going on, but don't tell anybody. That's the shadow culture. And so going through your strategic plan and through the vision is where you can bring in your lanes that you were talking about.
If that's what the board agrees to, it may or may not be.
And,
It's just
most of the time when you settle down and you get to know each other, there's 5 stages of board development. And there's a stage after you start off and you don't know each other and you don't know what is going on, and then there's a start where you're trying to butt heads because everybody wants their voice to be heard, which I believe is the stage that you're in right now. And then there's a stage that you work through that and you get to the stage where you're doing what you love. You're bringing equity issues, you're bringing art issues, you're bringing STEM issues, you're bringing the issues that I don't know what they are, but you're bringing them to the board, and everybody has a voice. And some of what it's not about you anymore. See what the thing is. So that's a part of the stages that you need to work towards. Now you can always slip back. That's the bad news. And I'll bring that chart next time too. So the way your staff and employees feel that they are treated and that they are listened to and that they are valued directly affects the culture of your district. So you can think that everything's going great, but if everybody that works for you is not in a good place and it doesn't trust and doesn't feel like they have a say, the whole culture can collapse. And that's not good for the kids, because we know that you working together directly drives student performance. And it's one of those things that you need to take into account, especially when you're starting to do the strategic planning stuff. That you're building a culture as well as your plan. Does that make sense? So do you have any parts of the culture that need attention? And then this cartoon, I don't know how it started either. All I know is it's part of our corporate culture. There could be things that have been going on that don't need to be going on anymore, but it's always been that way. And those are the conversations that you need to have going with your strategic plan. Not necessarily with what we're doing, unless something sticks really out, but I don't think we want to go there, so we're not going to. So for teams, see how they're coordinating, and what are they looking at? Are they looking at each other?
They're looking at the task.
They're looking at the task. So for teams, you have a common purpose, clear roles, and in this team, you do have clear roles because we have this. This is part of the protocols session, but I want you to look at this real quick. I think this is a great kind of showing of the difference between the school board and the superintendent. If you think, you can think of it as the school board is the board of directors, but the school board is the vision people, and the superintendent is the doer people. So it's kind of like y'all are management, and he is over the employees. And if you look at this, the school board governs, now in school board governance, and you're the governance team, because the superintendent brings recommendations and you approve them. So it's a teamwork thing. You consider the issue, monitor progress, which is why your strategic plan needs to have things that can be accountable. And the superintendent is the one that implements the plan. So if you ever think about that you're doing something that you might not be in your, just look at this sheet, because it's really a good accepted leadership. So in other words, that you accept that the superintendent is here to run the district, and that your chair is the leader of the meetings, and you have that acceptance. Effective processes, which we're going to talk about at the end of our time together. Solid relationships, not necessarily that y'all love each other, but that you can stand to sit at the dais together. It's also your relationship with the superintendent and the attorney and with Nancy, and you have solid relationships and clear communication, which is what we're talking about today. Destroyers of teams. Look, they're just destroyed. Pride, a lack of acceptance, suspicion, which we've already talked about all that. Inflexibility, and that is what I was talking about at the beginning, that you can choose to work and to be cordial and to focus on the mission ahead. That if you're inflexible, you're like, I'm done. And I'm sorry, but if you're done, you don't need to be here anymore, because it's not good. And docility is the other thing. That means you don't let people run over you, that you listen and you have a voice, because who is the only person you can control? Yourself. So those last two are the ones that you have to decide to bring. Now we're going to play our game. You're going to love this. We're doing the Myers-Briggs personality type. And this is a way for you to learn how each other chooses to receive information and processes information and expresses information. So this has been around a long time. Most of the time you take an assessment, we're going to play a game. Like games.
By the way, does your computer change?
That is a good question.
I've done this before, so I'm
Because it depends. Most of the people, it doesn't change.
I've done mine since like 18 to 10.
Most of the people, it doesn't change. And those that it does change have been like an experience or something has come up that's
Like trauma?
Okay. Not necessarily. It could be a good or a bad thing, but something has happened. And you'll see, it could be that before you got married, you did one thing, but after you got married, so it's, but most of the time it doesn't change. So the reason to do this is to build better relationships and get better results, because that's what we need. You're going to learn more about yourself, understand and appreciate diversity rather than just tolerate. In other words, everybody has something to bring to the table, and this will help you appreciate how others bring it. It's going to increase your scope and range of communication. It might be pushing your limits a little bit to talk to somebody in one way, because it's not how you do, but it might be what's needed. And these are your innate preferences, the preferences that you're really born with, and that your experiences bring to you. So that's why it could change a little bit. Most of the time it doesn't. And there's 4-letter personality types, which we'll get into in just a second. So here's the game. Okay, I'm going to give you 3 cards. And when I give you these 3, don't turn them over. I'll do it that way. I'll just do this. Okay, so you can look at them, just don't turn them over. This is the way they need to be. Yeah, look,
Don't let anybody else see them.
No, you can let everybody else see. You want to know?
Can't turn them over, they look at them over.
Okay, so you have 3 cards. Look at the words on your cards. And if one of these words does not at all, you just turn them over. What did I say?
Well, you said you can look at them, so I was like,
Joke. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, put your cards in front of you like this.
Okay.
Okay? And look at the words, and if one of them is just totally not you, raise it up.
They're all me.
Yeah. Okay, so expressive. Is anybody expressive more than what one of the words that they have?
Hard to tell.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
depends what
Okay.
subject it is.
And it
Okay.
depends on, because of the way my brain works. So am I allowed to say what one of my words is?
Yeah.
So one of my words is energetic. Well, that's some things, yeah, but really, if I never have to leave the house, I should.
Just wait. You might find another word that gets
You energy at the house.
Okay, anybody else have one of the words that totally does not? Okay,
Totally does not.
I'm going to read these, and if this word expresses more than what you have, let me know. Sociable. Does that word fit you?
Better than the
Sociable? Better than what you have, or in your case, you're going to end up with 3 cards. No?
Passing off perfectly.
Gee whiz, how is it? Okay, we got another expressive, outgoing. Okay, so now what we're going to do,
I'll take that one.
oh good, thank you, it worked. Reflective.
Oh.
I have that.
Okay, now we got it going. Sociable. This is sociable. Okay, so you still have 2 words. You all have 3.
She has 2 of the same.
What? You have 2 of the same? Well, you can't have 2 of the same words.
That's what she was doing.
I'll trade.
Instructions say.
I'll give you,
Okay.
D
Then
for.
this is what we're going to do. Give me one, because you have to have 3 different words. And what we're going to do is you're going to read your words, and if one of those makes sense, write it down. Okay?
I'll take the independent for this one.
What do you do?
Independent for one-on-one. Anybody one-on-one more?
I don't necessarily know what one-on-one means, but I mean, you mean successful communication one-on-one, or would you prefer one-on-one versus a group?
One-on-one would be that you work better with just one person than a group.
Well, then that's not necessarily true, but, I mean, I do well one-on-one.
We're gonna if one of the words that they call out expresses you better than what you have, write it down, okay? Okay, so go ahead, Jackie, and start.
What am I doing?
You're reading out your words.
Oh, enthusiastic.
Everybody done her always.
Enthusiastic, independent, and private.
Okay, enthusiastic, independent, and private. Did any of those describe you better than what you have? Enthusiastic, independent, and private.
Enthusiastic or better than reserved.
Okay. I'm going to take this. Anybody
I'll take
reserved?
the reserved.
I like that.
Okay.
Write it down.
Okay, so write your reserve down, I don't have another reserve, so write it down.
Enthusiastic.
And you want enthusiastic, okay, okay. Yes,
I forgot what she offered up, but there's two I've heard so far. Because I
okay.
lost track of where we are.
Expressive, no, now she is reserved, independent, and private.
And so,
Okay,
reserved.
independent and private.
So I should write down,
If one of those words is better than what you have, and then give me the one that you want to trade.
No, these are mine, then I'm not gonna have.
You still have 3. I just don't have enough cards. I don't have 5 of every
Actually,
color.
my
Okay. So she just gave me energetic. Is anybody energetic more than what they have?
Energetic more than what?
What you have.
Yes, I am.
Do you want to have energetic?
You're energetic?
Okay, write energetic down.
Are you energetic?
and what did she trade for?
She traded one-on-one for energetic.
Is this a modified drinking game?
I see.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've read yours again, independent and energetic,
And she wrote one.
and reserved.
I could go one-on-one for outgoing.
Okay, good, I got that card left. Outgoing, is anybody outgoing more than what they
No, I
have?
took one-on-one.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah.
And we
sure.
can't take 4.
I gave up
No,
outgoing, because I can be, but it's not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
One-on-one? I mean outgoing? Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. read yours.
Energetic, agreeable, reserved.
Okay, is anybody energetic, agreeable, or reserved more than one of the cards that you have? Energetic, agreeable, reserved.
Mine,
I felt the same way.
mine, my blank card, I like better, I like her reserve better than my blank card.
What is your plan?
What do you have reserved on there?
Well,
She doesn't have any extra
Oh,
cards,
okay.
so that's like your
That's
Make it a
imaginary.
card, make it a
That's
card.
your
okay, that's.
imaginary.
Tiffany, read your words.
Well, I have deep and reflective.
Deep and
Like
reflective.
the words I wrote down were enthusiastic, expressive, and energetic.
Okay, so you don't want these.
No, I mean, I picked just 3?
Yeah.
Okay, deep, reflective, and energetic.
Okay, so,
Great.
yeah, okay, so deep, reflective, and energetic.
I would say deep and reflective. So that means I have to do.
You have to give me 2. Yes. Okay.
What are you giving up?
So she gave up enthusiastic and one-on-one. Okay, so now Mara, read your words.
Independent, deep, reflective.
Okay.
See, it's not.
Reflective, enthusiastic, deep.
Okay, reflective, enthusiastic, and deep.
Outgoing, private, and agreeable.
Outgoing, private, and agreeable. Is anybody?
We only know Suzanne in this capacity, so perhaps.
No, are you more agreeable or what, or any of those words that you have?
Can we like distribute that?
Okay, so just stack those up and put them to, so we got to do this 3 more times.
Just stack them up.
Stack them up.
Don't look at the bottom.
No.
Don't look at the bottom.
Agreed. I looked at the bottom, but you need it.
It's a letter or something. Or on Jerry.
Okay, so just so you know, the goal is to get 3 cards that you believe describe you.
If you have 2 of the same, they
Okay.
bonus to
If you have 2 of the same, give me back one of them.
Good cards.
Is that different than what you have? Okay.
I don't, what is it? Can I have 2 cards? I like it. For real. Thank you.
Okay.
Is it like poker?
We're doubling down on this.
Three.
Okay, so any of the cards you have in your hand, you just totally is not you.
Detail.
All 3 of them?
Really?
Wow.
Uh-oh.
See those. Okay, is anybody more detailed than one of your cards?
What is that?
Detailed.
I like that better than this one.
Okay.
Ooh, I'll take that though.
Okay, so systematic.
Oh.
Oh,
that is so good.
he'd already given me a detail.
Oh, systematic.
Okay, anybody else have one of the cards that's just totally not you? Okay? Is anybody more idealistic than one of the words you have?
And then factual, yes.
Okay?
I'll take it.
You'll take factual.
Agreed.
Okay. Wow, that was easy. Okay, anybody else have a word that is just,
Anything else up for, what's up for grabs?
I'm going to tell you, okay? We have idealistic.
Can I have 4 cards?
No.
I know, I would tell one too, but I'm trying
You
to
only have
decide which to
three.
give up.
Idealistic, integrative,
Ooh, can I have 5 points?
integrative, more than what you have? Mara?
Ooh, tough call. So this is interesting because one of it is how I think of myself, but it's also how others think of and perceive me, because, right? And so,
No, this is only how you think
I know.
of yourself.
but it's like, I notice, consistent with my reward thing, I want to check in with others and say, how do you see me?
I'll change idealist
For,
realistic.
okay.
You know, I can see
I
myself.
think science is so
What was the
balanced
next
in
one?
both those areas.
I haven't read the last one yet, but I just got realistic. Is anybody more realistic? The last one I have in my hand is conceptual.
Oh, gosh.
There you have that.
Conceptual. Are you thinking
I'm gonna
about
change
it?
that.
Okay.
No,
Factual.
I see myself
Anybody more
changing.
factual than what they have? Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to each read what words we have, and if one of those words fits you better than what you have, give me the word, give me your card and write down the word, okay? And you can put yellow, write it under yellow. Okay, so we're going to let you start.
Detailed, holistic, factual.
Okay, so detailed, holistic, and factual. Is any of those words suit you better than what you have? Okay, David.
Creative, systematic, idealistic.
Creative, systematic, and idealistic.
Creative.
You want creative? Okay. Okay, so give me one. Okay. Practical is the one. I don't know if we said practical yet. Practical?
Gosh, I looked a lot.
No, you are now. Oh, you have factual. Practical.
I
Okay.
could choose.
Yeah, practical is better than factual, I thought, like.
So now holistic. Is anybody holistic more than what you have? Okay, come on.
Conceptual, holistic, systematic.
Conceptual, holistic, and systematic. Do any of those words go better with what you are?
But they sometimes work.
Which one?
Say them again?
I got holistic, factual, realistic, integrative, and conceptual.
I like realistic and integrated too, but I don't know what I pick up.
That's the rub.
I know.
It'll probably be okay.
All right.
Okay, Tiffany.
Creative, integrative, and imaginative.
What, I'm sorry.
Creative, integrative, and imaginative.
Okay, integrative,
Integrative,
imaginative, and creative. Any of those words fit you better? Okay, Terry.
Imaginative, idealistic, creative.
Creative, idealistic, and imaginative. No, is that what you said?
Imaginative, idealistic,
Okay.
creative.
Any of those words? Okay.
Detailed, creative, down to earth.
Detailed, creative, and down to earth. Anybody? Thinking about it. You'll hold it? Okay, Jackie.
Down to earth, realistic, and practical.
Okay, down to earth, realistic, and practical. Okay, so stack those up. Okay. This is the Myers-Briggs assessment. Isn't this more fun than doing a test where you just like bubble in? Oof. Okay, same thing. So did anybody get 2 of the same word? Anybody else get 2 of the same word? I forgot to say that the first time, I'm sorry. Okay, anybody have a word in front of them that is totally not?
Oh my God. These are like
impartial.
So perfect.
Perfect? Okay, impartial. Anybody else want impartial instead of one of their words? Questioning. Okay, are you questioning too? I don't
Yeah,
have
I'm
it.
more questioning than sentimental.
Okay. Okay, so write questioning down. Sentimental. Is anybody more sentimental?
Sentimental too, but.
I mean, I'm sentimental, but I'm
But
more
not-
inquisitive. I think I'm more questioning, I think.
More sentimental? Okay. Rational.
Oh,
Are any of y'all rational? Sorry. Rational. Anybody more rational than anything else?
No, I had a hard time.
this is a I'm so frequent. But am I more rational than,
Define what rational means to you.
to me?
The opposite of irrational.
Well, no, it doesn't, that's not necessarily what it means though.
I would say rational, level-headed, looks at, analytic, looks at all sides of an angle, kind of
Common sense.
clear, direct, straightforward, analytic. But I had analytical, and I'm not sure what's analytical versus rational.
I think that analytical is the person
Analyze
that
the
looks at
facts.
all of the facts. But a rational person would look at the facts and see that it's not just facts.
Oh,
Say
give me
that
that
again.
back.
Wait a minute. Say that
I said a factual person is going to be the one that looks at all of the data.
again. Yeah.
And a rational person is going to say, well, this is just one set of things. The school isn't really an A because it's all of it.
Oh, then I need rational.
Okay, so take rational. Okay, is anybody more analytical than rational?
I don't know, it starts with something fun.
No, give me that back, actually. I'm give me that back.
Okay. Okay,
That's my personality.
are you all set with your cards? Okay.
Wait.
Okay, I'm going to read these, and if one makes sense to you more, let me know, okay? Analytical is one of them. Compassionate.
All right, okay, keep going, I might.
Okay, I'll put that one aside.
I'll trade, because it's basically the same, but we're both sincere.
Okay.
Oh, I'll take sincere.
Okay, so I've got compassionate back.
Here.
Is anybody more sincere than one of the words that you have? Because you can write it down.
Yeah, I'll go with, all right, I guess, that's empathetic, but.
Ooh,
Give me that.
I didn't even get a chance. Empathetic. Is anybody more empathetic?
Actually,
You can have it back, you just have to write it down.
this is, I have
What are you
no
giving
idea.
up?
Huh?
I have empathetic, but I'm not sure I want to keep it, but what are you giving up? I haven't heard the other words yet.
I'm not sure, I might give up,
Trust
but I can't give them up either,
Okay.
questioning or rational.
I'm going to read these, and so then because we haven't said all the words that are out there. So I'm going to read these that are in my hand, and if one makes more sense, we'll trade, and then we'll go through the trading after you all read yours.
There's going to be a second.
Do
Okay?
we get to do that too?
Yeah.
Do you
Oh,
really
no,
want to, do you really
no,
want to do
no.
that?
I just think it's
Okay,
important
persuasive.
To have a balance.
Is
among
persuasive
ourselves and others.
better word than what you have? Persuasive?
I'll take it.
You're very persuasive.
Okay, so now I have empathetic back. Is anybody more empathetic than what they have? Okay?
I'm more empathetic than objective.
Okay. Objective. Anybody more
What's the difference
objective?
between objective and rational?
Objective is more like not being swayed by someone else's opinion. Or
But
not
doesn't
being,
that fit into rational?
no.
I think it'll
One
be
is not being
okay.
swayed by someone else's.
It'll be okay.
See, this is why I have to have.
Okay. Persuasive. Is anybody more persuasive? Sentimental.
Oh,
Considerate. Logical.
I know,
What's different between logical and rational?
Probably not a lot.
Because logical is like system, I would hear that as like rational and systematic.
So there's,
I think I have to keep questioning.
you'll figure it out. Okay, David, start yours.
Objective, compassionate, sincere.
Is anybody more objective, compassionate, or sincere than the word they have? Okay, Mara.
Questioning, rational, sincere.
Questioning, rational, sincere. Nobody?
Sincere, sentimental, and questioning.
Sincere, sentimental, questioning. Okay,
Rational, impartial, empathetic.
okay.
Logical, analytical, compassionate.
Logical, analytical, and compassionate. Which one are you trading?
Sincere.
For?
Rational.
Okay, write it down. Okay? Jack?
Questioning, empathetic, and rational.
Okay. Okay, so put those aside. We only have one more.
Goodness.
And then it'll all make sense to you, hopefully.
Will it?
I don't know. I'm going to see it, I'll tell you.
Some of these are. I have two of the same.
Okay. Anybody have two of the same? Okay, does anybody have one that you just, it's not me at all? Okay, easygoing. Is anybody more easygoing than what they have?
Probably would have to give that one right too.
Okay, you want to be easygoing? Okay. Is anybody more decisive than what you have?
The attorney.
Okay, anybody else have one that's just not you?
This one is not me.
Okay.
Easy go.
Tolerant. Is anybody more tolerant than what you have on your,
I'm more tolerant and easygoing.
okay? Okay. Easygoing.
Wait, can I change out my easygoing for tolerant?
Yes, just write it down.
Okay.
Okay, easygoing we did, okay. Anybody else got one they want to trade?
Interesting that nobody's taking easy going. Just to know.
I had one this year.
Somebody has it. Oh, no, I have the other one.
It's easy.
Actually, it is. Flexible. Is anybody more flexible than what one of the words you have?
I'm pretty flexible.
You're pretty flexible? What are you going to give me? Oh, you got, I already gave you some, okay. Adventurous.
Oh, right
Ooh. It's funny because everybody wants someone to say think they're positive.
Why do you
Yeah,
think it was positive?
you know, all of this, it
I
like
like adventures.
depends on how you
Yeah,
characterize
mine
it.
don't consider.
You have traveled
Conclusive.
all over the world, is
Yep.
that adventurous, but
Define what conclusive means to you, please.
That you can come to a conclusion, that you,
Closure.
Option, well, no, I like
you don't make a decision and then fret over it. You're conclusive. So like, that, you know,
That's better, that says it better.
Okay.
That is not me.
firm. Firm.
I'll be with adventurous. Okay, just really.
Anybody,
really speak to me.
anybody is more adventurous?
oh, all right. I'm gonna give up.
This is the hardest.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll give up a flexible for an adventure.
Okay. Flexible? Anybody more flexible?
What's the difference between open-minded and flexible?
Open-minded might be willing
Flexible
to think
can
about.
be with schedules as well. You know,
You're
like,
open-minded, is willing to
Are you
consider.
willing to meet this day, that doesn't matter, you know.
That's
Not
easy
flexible
going.
across all
Oh, yeah, I don't
things.
think that. I hear open-minded as willing to consider issues and positions that are not the ones you walked in with.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Tim?
I just don't think that that would be exclusive, that it just is a different perspective of open-minded. I mean, like, you can be open-minded and decisive, or you know what I mean? So one does not go at the expense of another. I don't see it as a negative or either. Do you know what I mean? It's not meant to be negative.
I think y'all have put a little bit too much thought.
Analytical.
Anybody else?
There you go.
Okay, so Tiffany, start reading yours. No, did we ever start with you? Go ahead and start.
Adventurous, open-minded, adaptable.
Okay, anybody want
But I
to
might have to actually give all of that.
just hand it to me and I'll give it back if
No, I'm
you.
not going to give it up. I
Okay.
think you are. I think you're adaptable. Thank you.
Okay,
Sometimes I can be a little like, but that's okay. Hard to tell.
okay,
I'm not giving them up yet.
Decisive, firm, and self-assured.
okay,
Adventurous, open-minded, committed.
okay.
I switched tolerant back to decisive, if that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so determined, decisive, and committed.
okay, so you don't, okay. So you're determined, decisive, and committed. Okay. Jack?
Flexible, adaptable, and self-assured.
Flexible, adaptable, and self-assured. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. So you're happy, oh, I haven't done you two, I'm sorry.
Tolerant, firm, decisive.
Okay.
Determined, conclusive, tolerant.
Who else had self-assured?
What were those again? Determined, what did you say?
Determined, conclusive, tolerant.
Conclusive and tolerant. Are you still toying with what you want to do?
No, I think I'm all right.
Okay.
You're not decisive.
So what you're going to do now is you can turn over your cards in the order we did them. So the first one was,
Red.
But I don't have them because they're written down.
that's fine. Oh, you don't know which ones?
She just needs to know what the letter is.
So on the back of your cards is either an E or an I. The majority, you have 3 cards. If you have 2 E's and 1 I, what are you? E. If you have 3 I's, you're not.
What is energetic?
Energetic.
I need independent, deep, and reflective.
Okay, so,
Reflective, deep.
okay, reflective is an I. And what was the other one you needed?
Deep and
Deep is
independent.
an I.
And what's independent?
Is anybody have independent? What's on the back?
I.
Is an I. So you're definitely an I.
And I have some greens that I use.
Okay.
Creative.
Creative for red. Which, does anybody have creative? Somebody else has to.
What did I reserve?
You were creative.
No, I
What's-
have, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's-
I have, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Well, I just,
Who's, okay, let's do this.
I have.
Red.
We'll do it easier, I think. On the back of your reds, which one do you not know?
energetic.
Energetic. Anybody on the back of your red is an E. Okay? You did you have all of yours? Who else needs to know what the...
Creative is yellow though, I think.
Yeah, I'm not doing yellow.
We're on the red yet.
Oh, red, that's right.
Okay, okay, now to
Wait, I need a red. Actually,
Yellow.
reserved. Reserved, I know I have, I think. Nope, anybody have reserved? What's on the back of your
Yes.
reserved?
I.
I. Okay, let's go to the yellow. Okay, anybody need to know what's on the back of the yellow?
Creative.
Creative.
Yes.
What is,
I need to know what creative is.
okay, who has creative that can tell us what's on the back of it?
N.
And
Creative
then,
is an N.
okay, so creative is an N. Anybody else? Okay, Tiffany, did you have another one you need?
No, that was it.
I need greens. You have a-
Okay, let's do the, everybody has their yellow. Okay, green, what word do you need?
I need 3 words. I need questioning, rational, and sincere.
Rational is a T.
Questioning?
Questioning. Does anybody have questioning?
Yes, I do. It's a T.
T.
And what's sincere?
Sincere is an act.
It doesn't matter because you're a T.
And it doesn't matter.
Because you're a majority, okay?
Oh, so we could, got it, about
Yeah.
this in each category.
Okay? So now write down your four letters.
Wait,
The majority of your card, you need a blue? What blue? Which blue do you need? Decisive
J.
is a J. Anybody else need another blue? Okay, so you've written down your 4 letters. Okay.
So it's so interesting. There's something called extroverted and introverted extrovert, and that's the only area where I diverge in that first one, because you know, would be considered, I think, an introverted extrovert. So if any, and I've done some research about the I and E, and it's interesting.
Good, fill it in and when we get there. So, the reason to do this is to understand your teammates better, the personalities. All of your personalities that you bring, you know, everybody has different things. The values and approaches and the way you understand things, the history with the school system, your history with the community, all of that can contribute to conflict, which I believe that you've seen. So this is a way to understand more about the people that you work with. There's 4 different dichotomies, okay? There's extroversion, introversion, which is what Tiffany was talking about, is EI. That is where you prefer to focus your attention and get your energy from. Sensing and intuition, or S or N. All of this is in your stuff, and I'm going to give you handouts too. That's how you prefer to take in information. We're going to talk about each one. Thinking and feeling is how you make decisions, how you go about making decisions. And then judging or perceiving is how you deal with the outer world. Okay? So there's 4, those are what your 4 letters mean. You're either one or the other of each one. No one is better than the other. It is what it is.
Can you go back?
So you're either an E or you're an I. You're either an S or an N, a T or an F, a J or a B. Okay? So none is better. I mean, you hear the word judging, and that brings up negative to most people. But it's not negative. That's how we're made and how we process and disseminate information. The good thing is that, in teamwork, it's good or bad. It's a kind of give or take. Similarities can be strengths or weaknesses. If everybody on the board was the same thing, it would not be a good thing because you wouldn't know how, it would be hard. Differences can also be strengths and weaknesses, but if you know those things, it can help. And we're going to use this information that we learned to help and nurture, but not to harm. So when you realize what each other is, it's to build the team, not break down anything. It's 2-way responsibility. The only person that you can control is yourself. So actually, it's a 6-way responsibility for you. You're gonna choose to use this information in a positive way. So if you look at these, the personality preference, it's your innate preference. The source of energy is either extroverted or introverted. That's where you get your energy comes from yourself, and you like to be alone. That's where you recharge. Or your sense of your energy comes from being in a group. You're the party animal. You like to be with people. My husband is an extrovert. He has to be with people constantly. Believe it or not, I am not an extrovert. I like being by myself. I liked the fact that I was in a hotel room last night and I got to watch TV and study my stuff and go shopping. I don't have to. I can go to our cabin for a month and not ever see anybody.
That's me.
But he can't do that. He has to be. I'm not home last night. He was miserable. So it's called job security for me. So, the way you gather information, sensing or intuition, and we'll talk about this, those are the difference. If you're intuitive, you can look at stuff. If you're sensitive, you go with your senses, which kind of makes sense. So I want you to do this real quick. Write your name using your dominant hand anywhere on your papers. So write your name using your dominant hand. For most of y'all, probably everybody, it's right-handed. Oh, no, you're left-handed. Okay. Okay, now do it with your other hand.
What about the same?
And compare the signatures.
Well, you said name, you didn't say.
Oh,
Well,
signature?
either way. So, I mean,
It's a good way to look at it.
you can do it. It's hard.
Uncomfortable.
If you broke your right hand,
I did that, I had to learn how to.
you would have to learn how to do everything with your left hand. It's not only writing, it's the way you put your shoes on. It's how you button your shirt, pants, and everything you do. But you can learn how to do it with your non-dominant hand. That's what we're talking about.
So nuns showed that when they used the rulers, right, on the kids that were left-handed?
My father-in-law was left-handed, and he went to, and back then, and he stuttered because of it. It always, until he died, he stuttered. Not bad.
Thank
but-
goodness we don't do that.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore. So what I mean is you can learn how to deal with somebody, you can learn how to use another part of this. Then there's action taking, judging or perceiving, and decision making, whether you're thinking or feeling. Those are the four.
Can you go back?
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, with the thinking people, it's the facts, and a feeling person is how's it going to make everybody, how's it going to impact everybody else. And you're going to get this all labeled, I have little handouts. So if you look at this, the strengths of each one, an extrovert is energetic, friendly, inspirational, they're easy to get along with, and they enjoy people. An introvert's strengths are their deep thinking, they're quiet and reflective. They enjoy rich friendships. So they might only have 2 or 3 friends, but they're very good friends. An introvert is a trusted confidant. That doesn't mean extroverts aren't the things that introverts are, and introverts are some of the weaknesses. An extrovert can be intrusive. They can be overpowering in a conversation. They can be seen to be boastful, easily distracted, and they always need to be the center of attention. An introvert, some of the weaknesses is they can be suspicious. They can be perfectionists, which I am not. Overly independent. You don't need anybody to do that for me. Cold, they can see to be cold. And they can be intolerant of interruptions. So if you have the extrovert that is overpowering and interrupting everybody's sentence, the introvert is going to be very intolerant of that, and it's going to cause friction. Source of energy, where you get your source of energy. For most people that are extroverts, they prefer to be doing something rather than sitting and reflecting. They are very attuned to external things. They communicate by talking. They discuss things. They're sociable, and they enjoy working in groups. On the other hand, an introvert wants to reflect. They are in tune to themselves. They text or they write. They're not going to talk. They don't like to do that. They learn through practice. They're private, and they enjoy working alone or one-on-one in pairs. So, what are the benefits of having both E and I personality types on this leadership team? Who is an E? Raise your hand if you're E. Okay, and so the rest of you are I, because that's the only other choice. What are the benefits of having both on the team?
Balances. One balances the other. If I can't remember which fell in which category, but if I'm sort of in my own deep reflection, somebody else can pull me out to have that not just be a mental exercise, but have that actually forward a conversation by having to speak out what may be happening internally that I forget, other people may not be aware of. So, and I don't know if I'm confusing the categories.
I did a training with the leadership, the leadership team of a county. So it's the superintendent and her cabinet. And we got to, it was not this one, it was a different one. We got to a point where I asked a question and they all kind of looked, and she goes, I have an example. And so-and-so's a deep thinker, and I know that he's paying attention, but I don't know what he's thinking or what he is, and he could be bringing something to the table that we all need to hear. And I need you, that's what she said, I need you to start speaking up. And I thought, that's exactly what you're talking about. So,
I don't think I'm that, but.
yeah, but I mean, but that's what you're saying, that it brings you out. So what are some of the techniques that you can use so that both introverts and extroverts are heard? Introverts and whatever, or heard in a meeting. What are some techniques?
I think we have to be courteous of knowing that if you are an introvert, that you do want to speak, but sometimes, you know, the extrovert might seem to comment. Yeah.
Which is interesting, because I'm an extrovert, right?
No.
No.
Well, yes, you are.
I'm guys. What was that for the term?
No, Tiffany, which are you?
I'm a split between the two. It goes either way depending on how I do it. So today I was at 2 I's and an E, but I've had 2 E's and an I before. So
Okay.
There were some things on the I that I was like, yep, I can see myself there.
there's a lot of studies about introverted extroverts and vice versa. That's interesting.
And because like the one that jumped out at me was the weakness under introvert, that I think, okay, that's part of me, is I wouldn't use the word intolerant of interruptions, but I'm frustrated by interruptions. Because if we're going to do Robert's rules, I feel like let's follow Robert's rules. If we all agree to be here on time, let's all be here on time. If we're going to say, let's meet on this date, let's meet on that date, you know. But I get frustrated when we agree to something and then it doesn't follow that way. So it's not an intolerance, it's more of a frustration.
Well, and I think that it's interesting that you have 2 on the board that go between the 2 depending on the situation. I think that's interesting. And I think that actually the introvert extrovert is the one that most people have both of. Most people. I don't know if y'all do, but most
They
people
find
do.
they see more across.
Because if you were talking to me at one of those conferences, you wouldn't ever think that I don't like being around people.
That's totally true, because the first time I met you would ask me, is April, I would have said you were an extrovert.
So I can see both of in myself also. So that's interesting. So the important thing is that you just have to make sure that everybody gets to be heard. Okay, so sensing versus intuition. The strengths. Sensing are practical, businesslike. They like order. They're results-oriented. They're organized. They give fact-based opinions, and they have high standards. Intuitive people are original, creative. They can see the big picture. They're the visionaries, but they're also idealistic. So their vision might be of the perfect world scenario. And they're powerful conceptually because they can see, they can conceptualize it. Those are the strengths. Weaknesses, sometimes sensing people can be unimaginative. They can have the act first and ask questions later mentality. They can be overconfident. They can see small pieces but not see how it all fits together. And they might overlook the planning steps because they like to act first and think later. Intuitive, some of the weaknesses, they can be unrealistic because they have the pie in the sky. They're idealistic. They can overlook key facts. So both are overlooking something. They can be easily bored, long meetings, yada, yada, yada. They can be long on vision. In other words, they come up with a plan and they just do it. And they can avoid detail and administration. That's sometimes the weaknesses. So if you look at both of them together, they take information in. Sensing are pragmatic. Intuitive or theoretical. Sensing like the facts, the details. Intuitive are high-level plans, they're conceptual. One's the present, one's the future. Sensing, value, realism. Just tell me the bottom line. And intuitive value imagination. Don't think of the bottom, think where we could be. So those are the differences, and now you can see where they could be a conflict. Where could some conflicts come in between these two?
Some people just want to get it done. Other people want to think about the implications of how it gets done and focus on the process, which can be frustrating for those who just want to move on and get it done.
Frustrating in a job that's already slow.
That puts a bit of a negative spin on it for me, and I think intuition can be a very powerful tool. And the ability to conceptualize with early humans was the reason why Homo sapiens were able to be as successful as they were, because they were able to conceptualize a future that didn't currently exist for them at that moment. And being able to conceptualize is an important part of being an intuitive person, or just being a person in general. So, and everyone shares that ability, but I don't see it as negative.
I didn't hear myself speaking.
I'm sorry, I was just offering a different take on it.
I didn't hear myself speaking.
Amar, I didn't mean it against you, I apologize, I just meant it.
No, I'm not taking it personally. I'm wondering what part of what I said came out as having a particular slant. I didn't hear it that way.
Well, we're talking about the problems that you can have, and so.
I was just saying, I didn't hear, the way, when you said that, I heard a negative kind of connotation to the difference between being, can you go back, being a person that senses versus who prefers intuition?
So if you think about it this way, the reason we eat lobster is because somebody thought, ooh, let's try this.
It's a big bug.
But if they didn't try it, then we wouldn't have. But the sensing person probably would be saying, we got to wash that. Do we really want to eat it raw? Because they're thinking about all of the things that could happen. Well, the steps that, when nobody eats lobster raw, that you clean it, so you need both. But if they were fighting over it the whole time, we still wouldn't be eating lobster. That's the difference. Where it could be a problem, but if you work through it, it's not a problem.
I've done so much work, both being the other person, or like I know as the kind of person I am, who I need to work with in order to accomplish certain things.
That's such an interesting statement.
For example, when I write an academic paper, I'm not great when I do that by myself. I need to think and work in collaboration with somebody who pushes my thinking and my action forward. Left to my own devices, I don't do it that way.
What do you do? Stagnate? Or?
I procrastinate. But if I have to work with another person who, A, I enjoy working with, B, I think is more adept or thoughtful about a particular thing, it pushes both my thinking and my action forward. So I've learned to structure my academic work that way.
That's interesting.
And who to engage with. So I don't see it as a judgment. I see
So you don't, and I
each
heard you
person
say,
brings to the table.
and I almost heard it as like a weakness part, so I apologize. And what you're saying is that it's a recognized, that you see your ability to strengthen yourself by collaboration.
In this particular instance, I know for myself, I can be very analytic, I can be very conceptual. I'm very good at seeing abstract and then bringing that down into like an outline form. But other people can get frustrated with that because they want to not go through that whole process. They just want to get to, okay, so what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? I need to think it through in a particular way. Similarly, there are people maybe who can dance around a lot, and I just feel like, okay, great, so we can spend 2 hours in a meeting, but if we don't produce a result by the end of it, this is a waste of time.
That's where you can be a conflict.
Yeah.
So what things could you put into place? Kind of like we did with the other one, making sure everybody's heard. What kind of things can you put into place in your work together so that you don't have the frustration? Oh, well, that's true. That's true. On this one, who's S? Who's sensing? You are? Okay, so we have Jackie, Laura, and I'm sorry, Suzanne, thank you. You don't have a little thing in front of you. And so everybody else is intuitive?
Yes, and so many of the sensing ones, I find myself in, well, it's just not how this test came out.
Right.
I do that too. I can be the one in meetings who says, like, what's the outcome of this? Because otherwise it's a waste of our time. I can, I don't, but this particular test came out in a particular way.
Well, it's same as the first one. I think that you have different, it's the way but we're adaptable and we can learn to work and the important part of this is when you know that what the problems could be if everybody else was one thing and one was there could be a lot more problems. You're pretty evenly distributed.
I know what that
with
says.
this. So thinking versus feeling, the strengths. Thinking are problem solvers, deliberate, there's consider alternatives, they're objectives, and they're fair-minded. Feeling are wanting everybody to play nice. They want collaboration. They are persuasive. They are perceptive of others' feelings. They can read a room. Empathetic and considerate. Some of the weaknesses. Thinking doesn't consider the subjective. They're just into the facts. They can be too analytical. They can be overly cautious. Nothing gets done. They can be controlling, and they can be very serious. And feeling people are unable to deal with the hard issues sometimes. Don't talk about resounding. They can be melodramatic. They can be concerned with people over content. The decisions that you make aren't going to make everybody happy. So this can be, everybody can do that part that can be weakness. Prone to guilt, oh man, and easily hurt. So if you look at them together, people who prefer thinking, not that they can't ever feel, are analytical. They use cause and effect. They're your T-chart people. They problem solve with logic. They can be described as reasonable, and they drive for objective standard of truth. They search out for the flaws in an argument. Prefer feeling are empathetic. They are guided by their values. They assess the impact that the decisions make on people around them. They're compassionate. Strive for harmony and positive interactions. And they search for a point of agreement in an argument. So, which one? Let's look. Who is thinking? So we have 3, and feeling. Okay. So how best would a feeling personality type help this team? I'm going to go back. How best? What?
The last one, the win-win.
Win-win. Search for an agreement and argument. Okay. Anybody else have it?
Well, and a feeling person focuses on, in this model, focuses on the relationships over necessarily the outcome.
Right.
Doesn't mean they exclude the outcome, and it doesn't mean outcome-oriented people are not sensitive to relationship. It may just be a different prioritization. It's funny, I find these challenging.
I can see myself on both sides.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last one I was very strong on. This one.
Did you have both letters when you flipped it over?
This one, yes. The last one I had all letters, which I thought was interesting. I did last one.
What would the T personality, the thinking personality, you kind of already talked about it. Somebody needs to look at the flaws, because if not, you're all agreeing to everything, and you're not really questioning
They also
things.
tend to, I think, keep things on track.
when overly focused on relationship, you can lose sight of the work itself or the goals itself.
Yeah, and what about the logic part? I mean, you know, you need somebody to bring the, what can we really do? You know, everybody wants 100% success of every student. What is realistic, and that's the way to get there. So you need both. So judging versus perceiving. These are your strengths. Judging, complete your tasks. They're confident, they're self-assured, they're the ones that develop the procedures, they're dependable, determined, and persistent. Perceiving are flexible, they're open, they're easy to share with. Most of the time they aren't complaining. They're spontaneous, people like to be around them. Some of the weaknesses. Impatience, for judging people, can be impatient. They can unable to operate outside procedures, and they can be inflexible. Frustrated by change, frustrated by people that don't follow the rules, and they can be unwilling to rethink decisions. Perceiving can be seen as drifting, you know, rabbit, squirrel. They can be indecisive and undiscriminating. They can be unreliable sometimes. Sometimes they don't complete what they start. They got lots of pots spinning. And they are incapable of making decisions alone. So.
See, this is, I am more perceiving on this, but I do not relate myself to most of the characteristics of their perceiving at all.
Of the positive one, the strengths or the weaknesses?
Wait, Laura, you go back.
This is the strengths. This is the weaknesses.
Even of the weaknesses.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's very,
You know, I think the challenge with this, though, on the one hand, you know, there's ways in which we know ourselves best, but we have, sometimes other people can see things in us that we don't see well in ourselves, because we see it we know ourselves so well, but we don't, when we take an action, we see and feel what's going on inside us, whereas other people may experience that in a very different way from the outside. And I think that's where these become so challenging. Jackie may perceive herself in a particular way, but it's different from how I perceive her, just as somebody who experiences her actions but doesn't live them, for example, right? Likewise for me, I'm sure there's ways I perceive myself that others are like, are you kidding? You're so not that way.
Well, I would imagine that we're all very different in our private lives than we are in our work lives anyway. I mean, Suzanne has described herself in a way that I think most people who meet her within a work setting, and I apologize, Suzanne, but, you know, I think that Suzanne probably is very different than when she's here not saying a word with us all day long every day. Do you know, I mean, I don't think she sits like this at her home or in
See, I think how you show up in one place is how you show up in all places.
I don't think that's true at all.
Different expressions of it, but I think how you are in one area is how you are in all areas. You just may not.
I don't believe that that's true overall. I believe that we can adapt to certain situations.
Doesn't exclude adaptability.
And this is the way, again, I think you're putting too much thought in not just you, but overall. These are things that your perfect world scenario for yourself. And so when we say, and I think part of the problem with the whole thing is a lot of people say, why do you even need to go over the weaknesses? Because we don't like to say that, and the weaknesses could not ever happen with you. I mean, but you need to be careful what to look out for, because you could tend to be one way or the other. But I think we adapt to our situations. And, you know, I think the older I get, the more I become myself again, instead of what people expected me to be.
So the older I get, the more consistent, like how I am here is how because it doesn't come from the situation, it comes from an internal sense of values or integrity or whatever that thing may be. And I become less, anyway.
So no, let me explain myself, because perhaps I didn't explain myself well. My values, my integrity, my character, those things don't change. I'm the person I am here as I'm raising my family, or I'm in my church, or I'm with my friends, but I'm very different outside of this room or this job when I am private with my family or with my friends. There's another part of me, and probably a lot of the safety that I've needed to create for myself within this position has caused that, but I would just say that while I don't change as an individual, my outward
Behaviors.
I can,
Does that make sense?
kind of explain it, like when I said that I'm really not an extrovert, but at the conferences, I'm everywhere, I'm smiling, I'm happy, I'm talking to people, I'm taking them, running around. I have to make myself do that.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about, change. I bring all of those other things with me, but I put that aside and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. That's,
I mean, of course.
yeah.
I mean, at the risk of being on camera, I curse a lot more at home than I do in a public space. I behave in different ways with my kid than I behave with you guys. It doesn't mean that what generates my actions and my beliefs shifts, and that's the part I was referring to.
Yes, and I agree with
Say
you.
ships? Or,
Ships.
oh.
Sorry, dude, I didn't know all my rights.
We have a lot of soap and hand sanitizer these days, so
I'm
whatever.
for the cousin.
So this is do we go over this one yet?
So you're referring to my
In
policy,
this-
that's how you
If you look at them side by side, judging are usually scheduled or organized, perceiving flexible. They don't mind going, off the schedule. Judging usually finish one project before they start another. Perceiving or have many projects, and most of them aren't done. Judging likes things to be decided. Perceiving are open to change. They enjoy surprises. The routines are different. Routines are effective for one. Routines are limiting for another. Avoid last minute stresses, and then those who are perceiving can be energized by the last minute pressure, the procrastinators, the ones that need that little push for the deadline. So how can they come into conflict?
So I'll give an example of the difference of those two. So I'm a J. One of my sons is a P, and we are very routine oriented in our house. Everything for kids, very routine oriented. He does not operate like that. He's like the odd person out of the routine where you're Griff. So from that perspective, if you bring it into this environment, if you're very routine oriented, you like things to be a certain way, and other people don't. I've seen it displayed. If other people don't think about things in that way or feel comfortable in operating in that way, it really does create a discord, and he kind of feels like everything's operating around him.
Yeah.
And so I can see how that would be disruptive to a work environment if someone feels outside of that their methodology is not being incorporated.
Or think about the person that's the only J, the only one that has routine and on schedule, and you put them into a situation where everything's flexible. It can be hard. Both of those can fight against each other or butt heads with each other. What about the last minute thing? If you avoid last minute stresses like the plague, and you're working with a superintendent that doesn't have the timetable, and he doesn't mind putting stuff on the agenda on day 6 when it has to be there on day 5, that can cause trouble with both. So be aware of those things. And then if you know, oh, we didn't do this, who's judging? Who is a J?
I'm in between J.
Okay. David, were you a J?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so the rest of you are P. So you're even again. And so the benefits of doing this, you can reduce defensiveness when you're in a disagreement because you can see where the other person's coming from. I'm going to give you handouts that you can look and we're going to write down what everybody is in just a minute. You can increase openness. All of this takes practice and the willingness to do it. You can improve your ability to see others more for who they are and appreciate what they're bringing to the table and appreciate how they're different. You can appreciate your own contributions and your responses. In other words, now you might understand why you respond in a certain way. And choose realistic goals that the bottom part of that, accomplish what you say you will accomplish. And so all those are important. So we're going to do this summarizing of the team. If you have similar team types, this is one of the good and bad. You might come to decisions quickly, but you're only going to have one side of view. You might understand each other more quickly and easily, but you might be losing something in the translation. You might not see the other side. If you have a variety of teams, people on the team, it takes longer to establish communication. It takes longer to figure out how to talk to each other. It takes longer to reach consensus because everybody needs something else to reach consensus with. And it's easy to overlook. You're less likely to overlook the possibilities and details because somebody else is going to be bringing it up. Somebody's going to remember or think about what you didn't think about. So teamwork is the dream work. Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. And that's what we want to get to. So Henry Ford. That's great. We're going to, let's see. Let's write down what y'all are. Let me get a piece of paper. I have paper right here. Can I borrow your pen? Okay. Are you going to take notes? Okay, so Jackie, what are you?
I'm an ISJC.
You're not Jackie.
I'm ISPT.
Okay.
ENPF.
Okay, Tiffany?
ENFJ. Or INFJ, it's really split issues.
We're gonna put an I.
IITP.
TP. I what?
IITP, in the order that they did it here.
Okay, so you're either an S or an N.
Intuition
Oh,
is an N.
Oh, sorry, N.
N? TP.
INTP.
Okay.
INFJ.
ESFJ. Wow, you're
Yes,
Yeah.
ESFJ.
Why is that weird?
No, she's just totally different from everybody else.
We need it.
Well,
I'm FJ.
I guess, anyway.
Wait, I'm sorry. What was Tara's?
Terry is ENFP.
You're going to, I'm not writing these down.
Oh.
Somebody's going to share them.
Well, I'll share them, and then we're going to go through each one of the things too, so that you can, anyway, you'll see. But this can improve your communication. You can utilize each person in a different way because you'll know who's going to be the ones that are decisive, who's going to be the ones that are going to finish strong, all that kind of stuff. Kind of what you were talking about before with what your likes and who the go-to person might be for diversity issues. And you're going to learn that along with this. It can help. So we're making a connection. Oop. Composition of the team, which we're going to look at right now.
At some point, I'm going to take a
Right now, look, it tells us, quick break, like 5 minutes. Okay, so, we have to know what persuades, motivates, interests other people when you're talking to them. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So you can, like I said, you can choose it to be a joy or a struggle. Some people, it takes a little bit more work to get to know and to communicate with. So there's every different personality type known to man, I have a slide for. I'm only going to talk about the ones that y'all are, okay? So the ISTJ was nobody. So we're not even going to talk about this. But look at all the nice people that are ISTJ.
How did George Washington do that? I know.
ISFJ.
Wait,
Wait, can you
Oh, you are. Shoot.
I
I just.
come back.
Okay, so we are going to talk about this one.
All right.
When you talk with Laura,
Picture.
no, don't even picture people. But you need to present your argument and talk in a sequential order. Have your facts and details ready. This is important for you, Mr. Superintendent. Show her the practical application of what you're talking about. This is what this is what I'm thinking, this is how we're going to do it, this is what it's going to mean. Be as logical as possible. Don't give a lot of things that aren't meaningful to the situation that you're talking about. I've already noticed that you don't like the rabbit holes. Keep it on point.
No, you don't like the what?
Rabbit holes. Don't jump around. Don't ask brainstorming. You know, just give it to her after you've done all that. Spontaneity isn't always necessarily the thing to bring. Don't surprise. Don't always make emotional appeals to get what you want. In other words, give her the facts. And for security and consistency is the ideal. So every time if you do the same thing when you speak with her, it's going to make her happy.
Is Laura the only one who was this side?
Yes.
I see that.
I think all of you were different for all 4 letters. ISFJ is nobody.
She had two, did you do 2 slides?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
ESTJ, nobody. ESFJ,
Nobody.
yes. Suzanne is ESFJ.
Oh, is that you?
So when you're talking with Suzanne, be clear, yet considerate, show concern, speak sequentially and give her the facts, be honest and polite, and you can tell her how you feel. See how the message correlates with her value system and how it positively impacts people. Don't disregard feelings. Don't accuse them of being irrational if you get emotional. I don't get the...
I've never seen her get emotional.
Don't cut them off. Let them get what they need to say out and keep it clear. Keep your message clear.
But that's her job.
Right.
Just to keep the message clear.
That's her training. It's like police officers are trained a particular way. Lawyers are also trained.
This is Jackie, ISTP. So when you're talking with Jackie, be straightforward, concise, realistic. Show the practical and immediate application for what you're talking about. Keep the message simple. Again, don't go wandering off. Hands-on demonstrations, charts and graphs if possible. And listen carefully to what she has to say. Don't overschedule their time. Don't pack too much into one thing, but also don't go on and on for meaningless conversation. Don't ask invasive questions. Use emotions to manipulate. That's common. We already saw that once. Don't talk over them. Let them finish. Don't interrupt. And remember that they choose their words very carefully. They don't just speak. So don't take silence as that they're not thinking or not caring. And it says to remember they're not always very talkative.
Really?
ISFP. None of y'all have this. ESTP. Nope. SFP. Nope. INFJ. Yes.
That's me.
And Tiffany. You have two of these. Two people.
Nelson Mandela.
Focus on the vision or goal for the future.
I know, I was good with the top, but then the bottom.
It drew you, right, Nicole? These two are the big picture people, which is good to have a superintendent as a big picture person. Be conscientious and honest. Don't try to bluff them. Show how your idea is going to benefit the community, benefit your schools.
Customer presentation tonight.
Yeah. Be ready to analyze, plan, and strategize.
We hired the right man.
Yeah.
And know that they might play the devil's advocate. They're going to look at situations from different sides. Don't rush. Let them have their time. Often have an abstract approach. In other words, there's not just one way to get it done. They think symbolically, and it's difficult for them to express sequentially their viewpoint because they're thinking of the big picture. They don't think of all of the things that come. Don't patronize them if you don't understand them. Sarcasm does not work. Don't expect them to use tried and true way because they're going to think of a different way to get it done. They're going to think out of the box. And they don't trust other people's personal experience as the reason to move forward in any particular way.
I can see that.
Okay. INFP. Nope. FJ. You have an INFJ. Oh. ENFJ.
Bless you.
Nope.
That's Tiffany.
No.
No, Tiffany is an INFJ.
Oh, she said E first.
Well, either
I'm
one.
somewhere between the two. If you'd like to go over that one as well, it's fine.
We'll do that.
We're not going to.
Plus, we get to look at somebody.
Yeah.
Focus on the big picture and how your message is possibly.
Catch it in gyms.
Yes, that's
Between the I
This is Tiffany.
yeah.
Sort of.
Show compassion and kindness. Be sincere. Eye contact is big. If they're talking to you, maintain eye contact. Don't dismiss their feelings. Don't rush. They like to talk things out. They like to be given time. Don't trash others. It turns them off. They don't like the gossip. Is not important to them. Don't focus on the details. They're going to ask you if they need them. Get to the, let them think about it themselves, and if they need more data, they'll let you know. ENFP. This is, I read it. How did I do this? Terry. Oh, okay, Terry. Ready?
Dr. Susan Gerber.
That's pretty good. Be open-minded and willing to brainstorm. They love to talk about the possibilities, looking at the future. Be honest and unprejudiced, sincere. And again, you can't bluff them. They know. Focus on the future and the possibilities that are coming. Give lots of options and make sure you're being attentive. Don't be doodling. Don't limit them, or her in this case. Don't focus on a lot of details. It's just frustrating. They want you to tell they get to the point. And don't shut them down. If they want to think outside the box and think of what could come, don't shut them down. Don't be too formal. They like to laugh. They like to be casual. And don't get personal. They don't like you to pry into their personal life. INTP.
That's me.
Yes. So Mara, be logical and open-minded. Think about the possibilities. Be creative when you talk to Mara. Don't throw a lot of structure. They want to think about the ideas. Be reasonable and honest. Again, don't try to put one over. Solving puzzles and brain teasers, they love it. So if you like to do, if they have to see a problem, they want to figure out an answer, so you need to appreciate the problem solving skills. Don't make them conform to all these rigid rules. Don't put them in a box. They like to look for different ways to do things. Don't rush. You need to stay calm and steady. Don't get overly emotional. And they tend to be reserved and respect that. So don't try to make them the life of the party. So, TJ, INTJ. If I miss it, let me know. ENTP.
Nancy should have done this too.
Yeah.
We should have. I didn't have enough cards. ENTJ.
That's it, we did everybody. Yeah.
We did? Okay. Okay, good. We're almost doing
What was Mrs. Zork's
Oh.
initials?
ISTJ.
So you're keeping track of these, Nancy, that
I
you'll
just wrote them
send to
all
us?
down, yeah.
Thank you.
And I don't have a copy of the hand. I gave you, and maybe one of y'all can give Nancy these so she can copy them. A whole bunch of information, conflict, communicating, and the definitions of each of the styles. The reason to spend some time on this is because communication is the key to all of those different governance roles that you have. How you communicate makes a difference. And knowing who to send when you're talking about the referendum. You might not want to send somebody that is quiet and passive. You might want to send somebody that is more extroverted and that people tend to like. So, I mean, knowing that, you might want to pick who you send to different groups.
And while these things give guidelines, there are things we know about each other and each other's strengths that may fall outside of these guidelines.
Yes.
Or perceptions of other people's strengths.
Yeah.
Yes, this is one of those tools to put in your tool chest to use to strengthen your team and also to build trust in the community. You don't want to send somebody to fail. So if you know that in our board, we didn't send one particular board member to the arts groups because he was a coach, and then it wouldn't have worked. We needed to send somebody that was more of this, and so, but we understood that about each other, and yeah. There's 6 principles of intelligent conversation. The word intelligent is very important to remember. So these are 6 principles that if you can remember them and do, at least keep them back in the back of your mind, it can lead to good conversations and trustful communication. So the first principle is the messenger is the message, kind of what I was just talking about before. You wouldn't buy a car from somebody you knew was a crook, would you? You wouldn't you wouldn't do something that somebody that you don't believe has any credibility is asking you to do. So the messenger is the message. And in schoolwork, the message, when they see you coming into the school, if they're thinking, oh crap, that's what they're going to color whatever you say to them with. If they think of it as a positive thing that you're coming into their school, into their meeting, into whatever, it's going to start the conversation off on a positive note. Credibility is a cornerstone. If you read the quote, the first law of leadership is if we don't believe in the messenger, we won't believe the message. If you're asking people to do something, you're asking the teachers to work 30 minutes extra every day because of the hurricane, and they don't believe that you don't have the money to pay them, that you really don't have the money. The credibility is a cornerstone of all of the things that you're doing. And if you got to look, and that's why it's so important that when you come in front of people that you present yourselves in a way that builds credibility. Because if you crumble it, they're not going to believe what you're talking about. The listener defines the meaning. This is important. This is important for teachers to understand. If the person you're talking to doesn't understand what you're talking about, doesn't get it, whose fault is it? Who do we tend to blame?
Right. Can I bring up a
Yeah.
point on that? It's like when teachers say, well, I don't know why the kids didn't do well on the test, I taught it. And they might have taught it, but it's not the perception of the listener on how they receive the information to be able to reverberate that on the test.
We tend to blame the person we're talking to. But if we're trying to get information to communicate with them, it's our problem if they don't understand. So when we were talking about the policies, you know, they're out there, people just don't understand where to get them. It's not their fault that they don't understand where to get them. It's you know, you have to talk to people in like 32 different ways now. You have to tweet, you have to Facebook, you got to do all this stuff to communicate.
I think also that right there, we're on the process of examining this, but is the whole problem with the test-dependent systems, right? Because all our tests, we keep blaming the kids for not doing well on the tests and putting the kids into remedial programming without examining what's wrong in the delivery of whatever it is. And we've, not just here in Indian River County, not just in Florida, but in general, we have now developed education systems completely consistent with the problem is the kid, if they're not doing well, and we've taught, you know, all the ways in which we've tied teacher salaries and merit bonuses and all of these things, which I know we're at work on now to, as best we can inside a structure that's not consistent, but to flip that, at least in our own district.
And when the children don't trust the test, when they take the test, and it feels like it's tricky, but it's not, then you completely undermine their confidence in the classroom. It's such a self-exacerbating cycle that we put ourselves into. It's very interesting.
Yes. Are we off topic?
No. So when you can't say that you don't understand, that they didn't understand, it takes a little bit more time to say, that's not what I meant. Let me explain it. This is what I meant. Do you have, is that what you're hearing? You two have done that today. You know, it's now, sometimes we don't have that time. So it's important to think about it ahead of time and maybe even contemplate what the questions are going to be, or contemplate. If you're talking to a room and everybody's looking at like, you're like, you know that you got to explain it different. So that's important. And
Can I toss something into that? Something I learned elsewhere that I practice a lot is if I'm not getting it, I say, as the listener, will say, I didn't quite understand that. Could you say it a different way for me? So I'm inviting them, you know, not to do the old Saturday Night Live closed caption for the hearing impaired, which I've heard people just say the same thing but louder, like you couldn't hear it.
We tried that, it didn't work with the
That happened in a meeting we had. I kept saying, this isn't making sense to me, and the person kept repeating the same thing a little bit louder, or changing like an and to a but. But I will often try and say, could you say that for me a different way, inviting them to think about shifting the communication that may have me receive it differently.
And again, it takes a little time.
Yeah.
It takes more time.
I think April in education we call that witness. And it's like, yeah, it used to be that when we were evaluating teachers, one thing on the evaluation tool was witness. And you can't, it's hard to describe, but it's like, you know it when you see it. It's like somebody that can read the room and understand that when you're going on and the kids aren't paying attention, something's wrong there. There's a disconnect. And it's the same thing when you're the listener, you know? And with students, it's harder, because it's like, do I interrupt my teacher and say, hey, read the room? No.
I think that's one of the interesting things about teachers going in and visiting other teachers
Yes.
and working with other teachers. Because when you walk into someone else's classroom, even as an individual, we used to do something called foundations, and it was a sage on stage, like, whole room gets taught the same information. A lot of the kids are above where they are, and you can see the kids just disconnected. But as a teacher, you're in the moment. Are you with it? Or do you have witness in that moment? I mean, I'm sure it's extremely difficult.
Well, that's when I said that this is important for teachers.
Oh, yeah.
You leave kids behind if you're not.
How much, let me just ask this though, because, and then this is something to talk about later. How much of that type of continued professional development, right, self-understanding, understanding, how much do we really do that in education today when we look at professional development?
I think successful districts are doing it the overwhelming majority of the time. And eliminating sit and get development. So when I talk about embedding development into the confines of the school day, connecting teachers to teachers, that is really where we need to go. I think a lot of what our teachers have shared is isolation and development in isolation doesn't change or improve practice. They just see it as something set aside. So.
And I might just add to that there's a school of thought that considers withedness to be something innate, where you either have it or you don't. But I would argue against that, because there are many in the educational system that can be taught these skills. But it takes time before, and you have to be willing to be reflective. Would you not agree? You have to be willing to be reflective to learn some of these skills of how to read a room and how to understand whether your kids are getting it or not.
Well, assess your learners. And I think that's one that every time I walk in the room, as I keep on talking about, the first thing I'm looking at are the learners. If they're not engaged, they're not connected, they're not maximizing their brain potential in that moment, why is the teacher asking that same question? So what it is saying, you know what, this lesson that's scripted, a generic book that they sell across the nation that I'm reading isn't meeting the needs of learners. How do I shift or modify my lesson and future lessons to differentiate to the needs of all kids?
One of the problems with the testing and all is that there's not a lot of time to do that. Because you have to get this out and...
I think that's an excuse though, April.
I'm not saying that it's I'm saying that's one of the problems with this, is that...
I mean, what you make a priority becomes the priority.
Yeah. So again, you're responsible that the message is to make sure that it's delivered. There might be somebody that you have to speak a different way to. You might have to tell your husband a different way than you would tell a girlfriend the same information, because it doesn't translate. Or your children. If you have more than one child, you probably know that there's a way to speak to each one and a way to get them to buy into it.
I'm not sure if this fits here or it might come up elsewhere. An issue that we have periodically on the board is by the time we get to business, not only in board discussions, but also by the time we get to business meetings, it's late, we are tired, we're holding staff for our meetings, all of these things. So an issue that periodically comes up is the balance between board members needing to express themselves and needing to be succinct and direct in how that communication happens. How would you recommend we handle that?
When we get to the protocols, that could be part of that. There's also, if you have what I used to do, I would go 50 places between one board meeting and another. I'd write them all down and hand them to the secretary. I didn't have to tell them out loud, but I wanted them in the record. So you can handle some of that way. You can put a time limit on how, we're going to discuss this for 10 minutes. So there's other organizational ways that you can do it. You just have to make sure that everybody feels like they get to speak.
It would be helpful for us, and I don't know if this fits in the time we have with you or something we would do on our own, to to have a facilitated conversation about how we get to that in ways that each board member feels like they're able to express themselves, but is also respectful of other board members' time and the time of the public. The public tends to think that the only work we do is the second and fourth Tuesday from 6 to 9 p.m. So often there's a lot to get in that meeting, but often, and some of it is repetitive of things that happen elsewhere, but I don't think we've reached a balance yet, in my personal opinion, on how we structure using our time together most efficiently and speaking, and I take full, I am as guilty of this as anybody, speaking as succinctly and to the point as possible without also getting too much into the weeds of the district or the superintendent's job. I think that's something we need to really clarify and solidify for ourselves.
I think that that's something we can go over when we get to the protocols part. And it's important to remember that the work that you're doing is the work of the board, not the work of the community. So and it's also important to know that you don't have to stack things like you've done today on top of each other. I understand that everybody is busy and why. It's also important to know that you can change the times of your meetings. You don't have to have your meetings the second and third Tuesday or Thursday at 6 o'clock. You could put one at 10 o'clock. I mean, you can change when you meet. You do that at your organizational meeting. The time and
Again, speaking for myself, I don't have a problem with the time or the structure, and I don't have a problem with that the Tuesdays we have are very long days because it's a time we've committed to being here. It's not that. It's that the balance of us getting the work done, needing to say what we want, either for other board members to hear because we can't speak elsewhere, or because we want to speak it into the record, and what the public and the community needs to both hear from us, but also see us doing. And I don't know that we've really gotten our footing, our stride on that. My opinion, and we don't necessarily have to get into it now, but I think it's important for us as a board moving forward, because I think it feeds into these different styles and types. Some of us get frustrated when we feel rushed. Some of us get frustrated when other people talk a lot. Some of us get frustrated when we feel like we're going over an issue we've already discussed. Like we haven't really gotten a good, some people feel silenced if they don't get to really work it out in their head. We haven't really gotten a good stride for that. Has been my experience. That said, we're light years better for the most part now than we were 15 months ago.
when I said that there's 5 stages, that's part of it, is figuring out what each person needs to work the best. And, that's part of why you're doing this process.
Agreed.
So-
I just want to make sure, again, even though I'm a whatever type it was, this information is great abstractly, but to be honest, I'm not going to sit on the board and remember, ooh, Laura's a TM, whatever, or I got to interact. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that. What's going to happen is Laura's going to, I'm using you as an example. Laura may say X, I may think whatever I think about it. In my head, I'm not going to go, oh, she's a yada yada, therefore I have to give her this space, therefore, and we are a board in this community. Let's say this delicately. We are often under a spotlight in the community. We are often perceived in ways that may or may not be true. There is some sport in this community, as I'm sure in many, at taking aim at the school board and at the district. I want our work to be as good as it is to minimize the degree to which that happened. It has become target practice. It's become sport in this community over a certain number of years. It's our job to behave in ways that are impeccable, that make that impossible. And I want, as part of this process, us as a board to make sure that we walk out of, not necessarily today, but this process all along, with clear steps and strategies how we will be responsible for that. I don't want to blame the community, I don't want to blame the media, I want to take accountability and responsibility here to make ourselves
as impeccable as possible.
What you just said is exactly why you do this.
Yeah.
Because if you are that board that is impeccable and community will start to trust, it's easy to slide back. That's, the whole, it's work.
Yep.
It's really work.
Well, and you occasionally have, I liken it to an arsonist pretending to be a firefighter. Occasionally people create problems in order to be able to be the solution to issues, right? So that has to, and that's not on this school board necessarily, it's just in general in the community. So I think that you can only control so much, right? I mean, you can be as impeccable as you'd like to be, but the perception of your actions are what they are.
The difference is that if you're working together and a wrench comes and a kink, somebody throws darts at you or somebody does that, the response is the same every time. And then they start like, well, they know what consistency is important.
And to the degree that we are perceived as operating as yes, of course, there's always going to be critics. Yes, there's always going to be people who want to blow something up in the community because it's fun. But the degree to which we operate with certain integrity and impeccability, which kind of provides an armor for ourselves, because we are clear and consistent about who we are and what we do. Yeah, there's stuff we're never going to be able to counter. But it's incumbent on us to be the people who make it increasingly difficult to do that. And even when it's almost like, can that arrow pierce the armor? Well, no,
Right.
because of how we operate.
Well, and think of it this way also, it trickles down. So you're not only creating a sense of safety and armor
Yes.
with you and yourselves,
Yep.
it goes all the way down,
Yep.
and everybody in the district knows that y'all are going to have their back if something happens.
Well, and supporting a school board that supports their superintendent, I know everyone's heard me say before, I'll say it again, the school board that supports the superintendent makes it possible for them to take risks, because we're going to make some changes. Change is hard for people sometimes. It creates controversy. You talked about rezoning. Who knows what the future holds for us in the coming years. So, it's going to be important for the school board to stand together and support the superintendent through some difficult times where, not everyone's primary goal or need is going to be, the direction of the district. So,
Well, I would say it's not simply about us supporting the superintendent. It's how the six of us work together as a governance team and supported each other.
well,
We
that's
are
very
the
true.
person, the people who direct his work. Of course, we want to support that work. It's also our job to hold him accountable, as it is to hold each other accountable, but we can do that with a level of integrity and respect that makes it harder to throw bars at us.
Right.
And I think a lot about the trust and respect that our superintendent has and the collaboration that we have as a board is so important. Because if you have mistrust with the superintendent, unfortunately at the dais, when those recommendations are being made, and that's when you start questioning, it might appear, like a conflict, but it's just, I'm just not agreeing with what you're presenting. So I think disagreement doesn't mean conflict.
Right.
How do we get beyond that?
And you're not always going to agree.
Nor should we, frankly. That's
But
the point
again,
of
it's what you do with that.
Yes.
I disagree with that, though. Being a board member isn't supposed to be adversarial in nature.
I didn't say
But
that
what-
you're
I
going to
wasn't
be
saying
adversaries, but
Right.
you're not always going to agree.
Right, but I mean, if the superintendent's bringing recommendations and he's getting 5-0 votes for recommendations, that doesn't mean we're not doing our job.
No. And I get this. A lot of people think that when the board just systematically says yes, that you're just rubber stamping. We know that that's not true. We know that you've read all the stuff, you've asked your questions, all that stuff. It is, it is okay when you vote and you're going to support him, you can say, I have done lots of research in this and I totally agree. If you don't agree, I have done, I mean, I just cannot agree with you. I cannot agree that this is the best thing because this. After the vote, if it passes, guess what? That's what you're going to do. And that's not the time that you go out and you start criticizing everything that just went on. That's the time that when people ask you, we notice that you didn't vote. Yes, you said, you're right, I did not vote yes, but I support the board's decision. Boom, end. I mean, there's a way to disagree but not be adversarial, is what I'm
And
trying to
there's
say.
a way to say, this wasn't my personal preference, however, it was the consensus of the board, therefore, that is what is now policy, or
Right.
whatever the thing is.
And we're going to go forward from here. So the third one is to speak the listener's language. And the example that we have is Shark Tank. And if you've seen this, people come in, they're all excited about their little things, and they want money from the board, from the sharks. And the sharks, what do they ask? What's your plan? But what if you're asking me for money?
How are you going to make me my money back?
How are you going to make me my money back? The ones that they support, the ones that they give their money to, are the ones that can tell them how they're going to get the money back. The ones that are just all into it, they're, this is the best thing, they're emotional, they don't give it to. And then they walk out and they're like, why didn't they give it? Well, they didn't give it to me because they don't like you, they want their money. You know, and so that's the principle, is to speak the listener's language. If you're speaking to a group of people that don't know education at all, don't use education terms. If you're speaking to a group of, if you're speaking to the AFL-CIO, then you're not going to use a lot of education language. You're going to tell how you support your workers, and you're going to tell how, you know, you're going to build a community. So speak the listener's language. The worst thing that people in education do is they get up and they say da-da-da-da-da, and the people don't know what they're talking about. When you go see the legislators, you go see the people in Tallahassee, those people are not educators. So you need to figure out what their issues are and how they, you know, so again, it's your responsibility, it's not the person that you're talking to. In order to speak the person's language, you got to know what it is. You have to know what their needs are. You have to know what their interests are. If you're going to a group, do a little research. If you need to speak to somebody about something that isn't necessarily the nicest or the easiest, figure out how to build a relationship. It's about relationships, is what I'm trying to say. Communication is about relationships. So look at these. It's not what you say, but how you say it. And the percentage. What percentage do you think is? And I'm going to get my book because I don't know if I have this on slide. What percentage of each thing do you think is true? What percentage of what people hear is body language?
33.
33?
I'm going to say body language is probably about 80.
Okay.
I don't know if it's 80, but
What about voice?
10.
33? You think they're evenly distributed, okay? And words?
10.
Okay. Let's see. Yes, I did. Spoken words, what you say, is only 7% of what people get. Tone of voice, how you say it, what you emphasize is 38%. Body language is 55%. And the man who made up the scale is Dr. Moravian. And he said the nonverbal elements are practically important for communicating feelings and attitude, especially when your words don't match what you're. So think about this in today's world, where people don't talk in person. How is this relevant today?
Have you ever sent your husband a text and then he responds back like, what do you mean? And you're like, oh, I was thinking about this in a totally different way. So such an ability to take things out of context when we communicate in that way.
I would also argue, though, that you can't separate this from culture. This is also all cultural competence. How I may perceive things from my culture may be very, like, I'm not going to say this well, but
That's true, I understand.
But what seems to be off-putting body language or voice in my culture may be exactly how you communicate effectively in another.
Correct.
So we can't, so this is a little tricky.
That's a really good point. Because like in the Haitian culture, the men don't look at the women like the little Haitian boys do not look at the teachers, do not. Right, they'll look down. So if you don't understand that as a teacher and you haven't learned that, then you know how teachers say, look me in the eye when I'm talking to you, you know, and I witnessed it. So I know it's frustrating when you don't understand culture. So
Sure, likewise, in a Haitian culture, in my understanding, I am not of that culture, if a teacher sends a communication home to the mother and not the father, because in many households, it's the mother who drives how education goes in a household, not so in a lot of Caribbean cultures. So the teacher then wonders why nobody's responding to this communication or why it's not being handled. Again, because and there's so many things like that. Who speaks loud, who speaks softly, who looks in the eye, who doesn't, all of those things.
What you're talking about is actually part of this too. When we talk about this part, it's more so you can be aware that when people come and speak to you at the dais, how you're behaving is as important as what you say. Because if they're nervous and they walk up and one of you is, looking at your phone, another one, and one of you, and you're totally dismissive, and then you say, thank you for coming, we're so glad you brought your concern. What you just said is totally negated by what you did.
Actions speak louder.
Actions do speak louder than words. And what you were talking about, Mara, is kind of what this one. How that it's your responsibility to know what the other person needs to get out of the conversation. If my culture is not one that screams, and if the person that's communicating to me is screaming at me, I totally shut down. So whose fault is it? It's the person who's trying to tell me something is what they need to know. It's not me. See what I'm saying? So you have to be cognizant of other people, but it's your responsibility to get me the message, and you have to figure out a way to tell me in a way that I'm going to accept it and understand. In your board meetings, and I don't know, but if it starts a screaming match, people don't relate to that. They are going to shut it off. And so you have to be cognizant.
They're going to turn it on.
Well, but that's not the message you want to send, even if it is your culture.
Where I think too sometimes it's incumbent on us to be self-aware is the degree to which if we have documents, hard copy documents in front of us, or now a lot of us use computers or iPads. While we may be looking at something on the iPad to help prepare us for what's coming next or what we want to say or we're preparing, other people don't know what's going on. Other people see that as disinterest and disengagement. And I think we have to be real sensitive about that.
It's just an example of this. Is church. It used to be when the pastor said to open your Bible, now they say open your iPhone, your iPad, your whatever device you have. My husband used to always think they were so rude because they were looking on their phone. Well, that's where he is now performing his marriages with an iPad. Because, that's one of the, anyway, that didn't even have anything to do with this, but I wanted to.
No, I think it did, because if you think about the way technology changes the way that we interact, it's incumbent upon us as the users of technology to be sensitive to the barriers that it puts up for our ability to be effective. So I think that's an important thing that we have to be cognizant of and teach our children to.
Well, if we know that what you do is almost as important or more important than what you're saying, when people can't see or hear you and you're emailing, it's important to put that feeling into the words that you're using so that you can get your message across. And it takes time. The texting, you asked about social media before. It gets people in a lot of trouble. Because your tendency is to read something and like it, or read something and comment on it, or, that's your tendency. If you can't do that, if you know that you're going to read all this political stuff and you're going to, don't read it. Because it tends to get people, you can understand that. The harder part is to get your teachers and other people to understand that what they put on their personal social media pages impacts their work. And so that's a policy thing. It could be in your procedures, but I just be very cautious.
And I would not limit that to teachers maybe less aware. I have seen things at times posted by board members that have caused me to go to have a reaction. Let's just put it that way, to have a reaction. People get to do what they get to do. I am not the boss of anybody.
Yeah.
I would like us to be really sensitive about how things may be perceived, that I would like us to err on the side of caution for the good of the board and the district and the work.
Not everybody needs to know about the pimple that's on your toe.
Oh, I mean more incendiary.
But just, we've gone from a world where you pick up the telephone and you talk trash to one person, unless you lived in the party line era, which was, I did. But you're talking to one person. To the point where we are now is you talk trash on Twitter, on social. Millions of people could possibly see that. I don't believe that people understand how many people can see what they're putting on there. And
the effect it has on the people.
they will understand that when all of a sudden so-and-so 7 times removed from so-and-so comes up at Publix and say, I can't believe you put that on social media. And you're like, I don't even know you. And it's probably happened if, when you're in a political office, you have to accept people onto your social media that you might not have accepted before because you can't limit it. There's case
There's also
studies
a lot
of
of stuff. I see this all the time on Facebook and on Twitter. There are people who will like the page or follow it. I'm 100% clear are, what's that word? Not trolls, the other one. It's like fake accounts. It's
There's
fake
so many
accounts.
anonymous, everything's
I'll
anonymous.
see a name I don't recognize, I'll go look at it. It's clear to me this is not a real person. This is somebody for some
Alias?
reason tracking. What?
An alias, like they use an alias?
No, there's a word. I can't remember.
ghost or, I get what
But
you're
I know that happens. On my personal account, I don't have to accept that. On my public one, I'm told I can't delete it.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. You have no personal account anymore. You're a public official. You can have your April for Schools page, and I can have my April Morris Griffin page, but that doesn't mean that I can say anything I want on my April
No,
Morris Griffin page.
but it does mean I cannot accept
Oh,
requests or I can block people on my personal page.
You can say whatever you want.
You
can't say
cannot
anything
separate the two.
work-related. You cannot say anything work-related. You can say anything you want. Is it going to negatively impact you? That's different.
What I'm going to say, just because you can put anything on your personal page, doesn't mean that you should.
That's different.
Okay? That's what I'm going to
That's different.
But
I don't think that you can block people from your, and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. And I don't know, we don't need to go
But
down.
I actually do want to know this.
But I think that it's important to remember that once you get elected, you're a public official. You're a public official When you are at Publix, you are a public elected official when you're sitting at the dais. You're a public elected official when you're taking your kid to school and you're feeding the kid at night. You can't take the two off. Just like you can't take the mom hat off from the wife hat. You're always that.
I don't disagree with that. I completely agree with you. And I have found myself in moments of having to remind myself. I do want to know, though, from Suzanne, because she did send us an email not long ago about the rules on this on official social media. But is there a rule comparable to what April's talking about on personal social media? Can I block somebody because I do not accept friend requests from people I do not personally know. I will not ever do that. And if somebody is talking trash, I will block them. Is there a legal reason I'm not allowed to do that?
As long as you are clear that the two accounts are separate and that you clearly treat them. One is all about school board business and the other one is not. And that you don't do politics, you don't do anything on this other account, then yes, you can maintain it as personal and you don't have to make it an open public forum for discussion of any topic. It's your personal account. But as soon as you treat them, there's crossover and you mix them together, it's all fair game. Think of it like a public record. I don't care where the public record lives. If it's on your school board computer, it's on your personal computer, it's on your son's, tablet. If it's a public record, it's a public record, it's a public record, then I don't care where it lives. Same thing for school board business. I don't care where it lives. Personal account, business account, on your son's tablet. School board business is school board business.
So if I have a personal account, acknowledge something that happened at the school board that I particularly liked, for example, or something happened. So I'm a little, we can take it offline. I don't have to discuss it here. But I think that there's a...
all of us to hear.
Pardon? Okay, sure.
I think that the
I'll say it.
problem is that even, I'll give you another example. I have like 4 emails accounts.
That's all.
And so I see something and and all of a sudden it's not sent by the right email because that's the same thing that can happen with your social media. You can be on your public page, on your school board page, and think of something and make a comment or like something, and it's totally not. The crossover is too easy to happen, to have to think about. I can do this on this, but I can't do this on this. I just say don't do it on any.
But that's being extra cautious, but there are some people who do it very well. They keep it personal, and you can actually keep your personal so personal that it's only open to just your friends. I'm just talking Facebook because I don't have anything else. I don't have any other.
Anything you say on Facebook that has to do
just your friends, not open for public comment or public input, because you can change those settings on there. I'm just saying, the school board or whatever your site is that has school board elected site, whatever it is, social media. I don't have any of the other ones. That is open for public. And some people do it very well. Some people have the problem where they would miss-post. But I understand what you're saying. Be cautious rather than...
And it has to be presentable. Whereas somebody asks for your public record, all your Facebook posts for the past 3 years, you have to be able to give it to them. If somebody asks you a question in Messenger about a school, and you reply in Messenger, guess what? It's a public...
Sure, no, I get that.
I just err on the side of caution with all of this. Because it's easy to cross the two. Chuck Clemens, who is our representative in Gainesville, blocked somebody on his personal page and was sued and had to... So just... It can get tricky, and you have enough stress already. So, just
Could that sorry, no, I hear you, and I get requests from friends of friends of friends, people in professional environments, people from around the world, you know, people in India, like, I'm not accepting those, I don't know who those people are.
You just leave them up there. You don't have to accept.
Yeah, I don't. So I don't accept that. I've taken Suzanne at her word, I don't block people on the official page. On my personal page, I don't accept stuff. People can still follow you, but that's the stuff that's public anyway. And I'll say this, as Jackie said, no, I want to hear it. But so last week, I was really proud of some of the work that we did in our last board meeting. We passed a few things, I was really proud of them. On my personal page, I said, I'm really proud of the day we just had on school board. We did X and Y. Props to my, school board members, really proud of this work. Am I not allowed to do that because it's on my personal page? I then took a comparable post and put it on my official one that said very much the same thing, just in slightly different language. But am I not allowed to say that because I'm proud of the work that we did?
No, I think you should be. I've done the same thing where I've taken the school choice, for example, the thing from what's on the school board website for school choice. When you share, right, from there to another page, not our professional page, but to another group, for example. Because I wanted to share that with other groups that I'm friends with, that I'm members of. I can't share them as a school board member. So I shared them as me.
Right.
If that's subject
That's what I do.
if that ever becomes subject to public record, I'll just give it to them for public record. It's no big deal. It's on
But what
public
people are saying
studies.
is they can request not just that, but everything you did for the last 3 years. That's where I'm.
No, listen, we gotta also correct what is public record or not, because we have been told during the trainings, during the ethic trainings that we have had at FSBA, and this is the thing that's really, it's irking, the obsession with public record, is we have been told by the attorneys that public record is work-related, anything work-related communication, thank you. Anything that could possibly be up for a vote, anything on an agenda, anything work-related. If from your work email, you are emailing your husband saying, what's for lunch today, or I'll be home at 5 o'clock. What the lawyers have said is that is not public record. That happens to be on your work.
It's recorded anyway.
It's recorded anyway, but it's not public record. It's your personal email to your husband.
That's not what I hear April referring to.
But what I'm saying to your comment is, I think the question of what is considered public record makes a big difference.
Public record is anything that you're talking about work at the district.
No, but I spoke about,
That's it.
I said I'm really proud of this stuff we just did. That's school board business.
Yes.
If I do that, for a similar reason, there are people I'm trying to communicate with who are not on that. Have I crossed the line?
But that would be considered public record.
Suzanne question.
Yeah, can I make a suggestion? This is an interesting topic and something I think we could use some guidance and discussion on at some point. Perhaps we could have Suzanne give an update on maybe some, if we want to have a discussion of this in a workshop or something where we discuss public record with an attorney, or if we want to get outside opinion, we have to work, and then there's an ongoing litigation regarding, so I think we have to be careful about what we say and do too.
Just remember that
litigation about that.
people are watching. And so, look at this. If people use words that don't mean, but you say it with fake emotions, you can't do that when you write. You can't do that through text. So just be careful that what you're saying in any messages that you use is really what you mean it to say. And that it's going to be received the way that you want it to be received. And I agree that we need to go on with this. The fifth one is the communication has two purposes. To make a change to cause something to happen, or to affirm a relationship. Now, most of our conversations, communication is a combination of those things. And, you know, going on and on and on, if you're not making a change or you're not affirming the relationship, you're just using words that are meaningless.
And I think in that, I think it's okay, and I don't think it should, an individual should take it that, when you have a discussion and you have individuals that have talked about the topic and have said the things that you were going to say or the questions that you were going to bring up, I think it's beneficial just to say, you know, I agree with so-and-so, or I was going to ask the same question, and, you know, thank you for asking that, and not have to, you know, go ahead and ask the question again, or talk about the same topic, you know, again, because I feel like that causes our board meetings to draw on, and a lot of times whenever they draw, you know, keep going on, and for me, it's like, okay, let's just get to the point, because, you know, we've already heard that. And not that I want to be disrespectful to anyone, but sometimes I'm like, okay, we've already heard that, we've already talked about that, let's just move on.
It's part of it's human nature to want your voice to be heard. But if you're going to say the same thing that 4 other people have said, saying you agree is, in my opinion, a much better use of your time than rehashing it.
But there are times where you don't know what the other person's going to say.
She just said after everybody else has talked.
But she doesn't know if the person's going to add something different. And so what's the point of having all of the conversations about different personalities and understanding how different people communicate?
That's not what I heard. I heard that if in a conversation in a board meeting, 4 people has said what you were going to say, you don't need to say it again.
Oh, yeah. No,
That's what I
agree
heard.
with that, but
Not
there are
cutting
times-
off.
But that's different. So what I'm hearing you say is that somebody else is going to add to that conversation, and the thought is that person would be saying the same thing.
No.
That's not what she said.
If we're voting on a topic and we've all done our research, and let's say I start at the end with Terry goes through, you know, what she's discovered, and then, you know, you go through what you discover, and then Mara, you know, when you get to me, I might just say, I agree with that. I don't, you know, we don't need to necessarily, I don't have to go through everything that I agree with, or what I found in my research, if it aligns with what you just said. And sometimes I feel like we say the same things over and over. And I think what happens is that the good points that we were trying to make, they kind of get missed, because it's just, at that point, I'm just talking.
They get eroded.
Right.
So you're talking about 2 different things. When you're in communication, kind of like what Mara said, you bring your cultural differences and gender differences. You know, women think different, they communicate different than men for the most part. Some cultures put more emphasis on making change. Americans are more of that. American conversation doesn't always revolve around relationships. Other countries, the relationships are more important. They're going to ask you about your children and what you had for dinner and all that before you get to the conversation you need to have. Americans are more to the point in general, overall. Women tend to put more, again, on the relationships. Men have a more emphasis on getting things done and getting to the point in general. Okay, so that doesn't mean every time. But you have to remember that the different cultures and what people bring into the conversation. The 6th one is that inspiring communication is about the future. And I picked this quote: "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." So the most inspiring communication is the one that delivers a positive message. If you're going through the worst thing in your district to ever happen, let them know that it's the worst thing those others going to be a better thing coming out. So if you can use this and inspire, and what the quote says, is where you stand in moments of comfort is the easy part. Where you stand in moments of hardness is where you inspire people.
It's been interesting to watch David go through this process of again, you know, when you come in, you don't always know what's happened before you. So Dr. Moxley had every intention of trying to make certain things happen when she was leaving here, and some of those things didn't come to fruition the way that she would have hoped for a number of reasons. And I think David inspired people by saying, accepting this is an issue, I don't agree with it, it's not good, but we're going to accept it, we're going to make it better, and here's how we're going to do this going forward. So I've been inspired by that type of direct accountability and leadership, and saying, we recognize this, and here's how we move to the future, here's how we're going to pivot and change how. So it's been interesting to see that at work. It's had an interesting opportunity to do that.
This is important when, you know, the community's throwing darts at you too. Is, you know, the way that you accept responsibility for past, even though you weren't here in the past, people remember that. But how you say you're going to be moving forward, we're learning, we're working, we're trying to work together, we're trying to build our team, we're, you know, put that what you're working towards, not what you're leaving behind. So in business, they were looking at the role of positive communication and team performance. They looked at 60 business teams, and they looked at the profit and loss, customer satisfaction surveys, and 360 feedback reviews by peers, subordinates, and superiors. And they put these 60 teams into 3 different categories, which is not up here. They put them into high-performing, medium-performing, and low-performing. And then they went back and looked at those 3 teams, all of that. So they put them in the performing categories according to what business, you know, their productivity. And then they looked at positive versus negative, the degree that they were giving positive or negative expressions in their conversations. And inquiry and advocacy, the degree that they were questioning others with the intent of understanding, which is inquiry, or this intent of asserting their own opinions, which is advocacy. So they looked at those 3 groups of business teams that were put into groups based on their productivity in business, and they looked at these. So they, high-performing teams, so the ones that in business were high-performing, had an average positive-negative ratio of 5.8 to 1. And they balanced the inquiry and advocacy ratio evenly. The teams that were having the medium performance were only a little more positive than negative. But they weighted in their advocacy more than in their inquiry. Low-performing teams were negative 20 to 1. And they advocated 3 to 1. So they were talking negative, and they were trying to get people to come to their side rather than understand everybody's opinion. So this is proof. Then they looked at this, and they noticed that the positive-negative ratio is a key driver that influence the other 2. So the disproportionate emphasis on positive communication in high-performing teams. So they were positive more often, and it directly related to that healthy balance between the focus on yourself and others, advocacy and inquiry. It also gave them a healthy balance to being assertive or trying to understand. Do you, as your leadership team, need to look at the positive to negative ratio in your communications with each other?
Yes. I didn't know that was a question. I thought that was just a
I'm really interested, because again, I think
what one person perceives as positive, as positive, another person thinks is negative. I think that some of it seems blatant, but if we were to watch a board meeting, for example, or an hour of a board meeting, and individually rank what we thought were positive, negative, and neutral statements, I think we'd be all over the map. Because I think we are not clear necessarily on what those things may mean for the functioning of the board. Not for the function, I think we know conceptually what it means for the functioning of the board. I am not sure that individual board members hear positivity and negatively coming out of their own or other people's mouths in the same way.
I think, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think that if you have to, it's not about you. And if you say that, if you hear everything that goes on as about you, you're going to get the negative part. If there has to come a time, well, no, there doesn't have to. There needs to come a time.
That's the same thing.
No.
There has to come a time, or there needs to come a time.
There has to come a time. There should come a time. How's that? That if you hear somebody saying something and you think it's directed at you, after the meeting, you go and say, this is what I heard. And I took it this way. If you always think the worst of what people are saying and the other person, you're always going to think that they're saying stuff about you. And it's not about you. But if you don't clear that up, if you don't take the 5 minutes or the 3 minutes to have a conversation afterwards, you're robbing that person of saying, that's not what I meant. Or, daggone right, that's what I meant. You're taking that relationship and you're skewing it in a way that is unhealthy. So what I want y'all to get to the point, and we're gonna do this now. I gave it to you before. Confrontation is not one thing that I like. I'm pretty much a I just don't like it. I'm the person that wants everybody to be happy. I want you all to make nice, and I'm not going to be the person that goes in and makes you nice, typically, except for that's my job. So we do this in the last session, and you're not going to do that one because we're going to do protocols. So I'm taking stuff that I really think is important out of that one and bringing it in this time and next time.
That one too. Maybe we need to expand. That's a serious statement.
You'll be fine.
Okay.
Because I'm going to bring stuff that I think that you need out of that and put it into the next one. So this is one of the things, and the last session is all on thinking out of the box and pushing yourself to go outside the boundaries that we create for ourselves, perceived. Most of the time, they're not true boundaries, they're perceived, and we'll talk about it. So this out-of-the-box language, and you can use this for positive and for negative situations. And what this does is it helps both sides to hear each other and to understand the communication. So say something goes on, even has gone on here, and you feel like you need to, it's about you, and you need to get this taken care of. All you have to do is, do you have 2 minutes? I need to talk about something with you. They're probably going to run, but maybe not. And you say, listen, when you said that, I felt this. I imagine I'm imagining in a perfect world that's not what you meant. Or I imagine that if I had said that to you, you might have taken it the same way. And then I need to know what you meant, or I want to understand what you're talking about. Would you explain it to me? Have I done something? Did I say something that triggered that? It takes 10 minutes. Now, if you can't have a productive conversation, and you go into this with the need to cause pain or to push a point, don't do it. If you need to do this to clarify a situation so that the next time it happens, you'll understand that that's not about you, use this. You can also use it for positive. When you could use it for staff. When you presented that report, I really appreciated it. I felt like you had taken the time to understand all of the questions that we needed. And I imagine you put a lot of work into it. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you. And I want to encourage you to keep it up. That's going to help me do my job better. So you can use this in 4 negative situations, but also for positive situations. And I'm telling you that if you take the time to understand and to let yourself know and the other person know that you need to understand this, it's going to help.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. So can we go back to what we were talking about before? And I'll just role play this quickly?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mara, when you talk about wanting to split individual things up and have board members have different specific interests or I don't know exactly what that means and it concerns me. You and I have different political beliefs sometimes. I know this from different advocacy in the community or posts or different things. So while we may agree on some things, there are some issues that I think we may disagree with or fundamentally may go against my belief system. When you ask to separate out certain issues, it concerns me because I feel like you want ownership of it, and then perhaps the people that have elected me to sit here and who come to me and speak to me, constituents and families that I represent, may not be always at the forefront of your thinking. So when we talk about this, if you could be mindful about my concern about any one board member having authority over an area, that is the reason why I haven't jumped onto that idea, because I don't feel comfortable with you. While I think that you are the one who knows much more about equity and diversity than me, certainly on this board, and I don't know how my other board members feel. We may not always be aligned in our thinking about it. That may be because I have a lack of understanding, and that occasionally is the case. But maybe fundamentally we have a different belief system with some things. So when you say that, I get concerned.
Well put, given the exercise.
Thank you.
Would you like to use this as an exercise for you to practice that, or would you like me to respond to that?
I would like you to respond to it, because this is a conversation that I would like to have with you privately, but we really can't, because we
Right.
may have to talk about some things that might come before us to vote.
It's an easy answer. I am not suggesting in anything where I suggest that any of us take the opportunity as I don't like the word expert, take the opportunity as somebody who may be well-versed in an issue to forward the district in that. Anytime I say that, it's inside the context of we operate as a team. I don't represent Mara Schiff when I do that. I represent school board member. So when I say that, I'm not talking about taking my personal beliefs and dominating either the board or the district with those, any more than I would expect any other board member would do that. What I am suggesting is that we as a board identify what some of those areas might be, where we are comfortable with one or another board member taking a lead on an issue, because we cannot be all things to all people and do all things at all times. I was going to say, or we will make ourselves insane. I will say, or it would make me insane. I cannot keep up
with knowing everything from light bulbs to lawn maintenance, to curriculum, to equity, to art shows, to school choice, there is such a bundle of things to know. I want to be able to rely on and trust the expertise. A good example is Terry taking on legislative stuff. It is not an area...
Just thinking that.
Yeah, it is
When you
not
said
an
that, I
area
felt that.
in which I am expert. I love that Terry is giving us sheets and paragraphs and telling us where things are in the legislature. I find that really helpful. I would hope that when we had a conversation, which will be consistent with our strategic planning, that we identify those areas in which we acknowledge others of us have expertise, and that we could rely on and trust that in others inside of the board corporate, not inside of Mara Schiff, Tiffany Justice, Terry Barron board, etc. There are many things that people on this board and I fundamentally disagree with, and others disagree. I'm not asking us to take positions on those. I'm asking us to forward the work of the district inside of those issues that are important for the well-being of the board, the district, the children and the staff who are all a part, and the community who are all a part of this district. That is always and ever what I have meant to imply when I've said that.
I appreciate that. And I thank you for listening to my question. When you brought up Equality Florida and asked to be able to go as a representative, or to go on your, you have been invited to go, I firmly recognize the fact that you should not give up your individual belief system or anything that, when you come to the school board, it should be richer for everyone's differences, not that it takes away. So I would never say to you as a board member, well, I don't agree with that group, so you shouldn't go, as Mara Schiff. Not that I'm saying I don't agree with the group, but when Jackie and some other people said, well, wait, I want to look into this a little bit, and I did look into it, there was some lobbying and some political things that they were involved with that were concerning to me. So I'm just wondering how we set up a system that allows us to be able to continue to have that conversation so that we don't infringe on each other's independence or ability to exercise, to be outside of this school board, but then we also respect the fact that we have to work together.
So I'm going to...
That's fine. That was an example of a...
I think that what y'all are talking about is important. What you have to, and I'll give you an example. In Alachua County, we had a retired union president. We had a retired, she was a teacher, but equity and diversity, that was what her issue. So on the different boards, she sat on the community public health kind of stuff, the Juvenile Justice League, the prison to pipeline stuff, and would bring what she learned back so we could all discuss it. So you're not giving your total voice away. You're allowing somebody that feels comfortable in those situations to go and to be a part of the conversation and bring it back for your information. That's what I got out of that.
May I say something neutral?
Yeah.
I was thinking about the legislative thing because I know you were uncomfortable with the fact you questioned, about my political opinions and representing the board. So when I went there, my thought was, I'm representing the board. I stuck right to our priorities that the board had. I gave them to our legislators, and we talked specifically about each line item. And that's all I talked about. That was it, because I was respectful of the fact that I was representing this board. And I think that's why I took the lead on, looking at the legislature the way I'm looking at it with the bills. Being matter of fact, this bill's moving, this bill's not. This is what happens, and this is how it happens. Right now it's a quandary, and throw it up in the air because I can't keep track of it right now. So you're not getting an update today. But I will say that that was my feeling. Is I'm representing this board. That's my job. Is to go and just talk about exactly what we all agreed to, and that's it.
And you should, because you're the legislative liaison.
Right.
Agreed for you to
Right, but
that position
but she
to
did
do that job.
Right, but she did have some reservations, and I understand that. I totally understand that. So being respectful of that, I'm not going to go outside of that order. That's not the border I'm going to go outside. Didn't happen.
Well, and as representing the board legislatively, you are a designated board representative in this. your license is only to represent on behalf of the board. There are many things, choose my words carefully. In some areas, there is a, I don't know if I want to say fine or a blurry line between who and how we represent as a board, our advocacy for students, and personal, political, religious, and other ideological beliefs. We all have lives outside of this board. We all have people in groups and perhaps professional organizations to which we are connected that our fellow board members may or may not be ideologically aligned with. That said, if there is an issue where we are representing the board, as I did, I think that needs to be brought up to the board and say, hey, this is the context in which I have been invited to do a particular thing. I never heard anything about it after that. Hold on, I'm not done.
No, I wasn't saying anything.
What it does do is gives an opportunity for us, because we cannot ever talk privately, it gives an opportunity for us to identify those issues which may be hot button topics that we can talk about in the public. I notice, and I'll say this, I notice this is one for me, because I notice that in the context for me of advocacy and belief, and my strong belief that all means all, I have really strong feelings about that. That doesn't mean that I go off half-cocked as Mara Schiff screaming about what district policy is going to be. I would never do that. I do think, however, it is fair for me to come before a board, as I would expect any of you to do, and say, this has come up, this is the context, this is what I want to let you know about, and if there is cause for a further conversation, let's have that, and if somebody is concerned, let's put that on an agenda. There are, I will always, and this is all I'm going to say about this, I will always stand by all means all. That as an elected representative, I represent all students in this district. I will always stand by that. The degree to which that becomes a political or an ideological or religious conversation is something we should discuss inside of a board discussion workshop, and we should put that on an agenda.
Yeah, we should. And that was the thing, so we never had an opportunity to talk about your trip and have feedback, so I just want to make sure that we're having that, that there's an ability to be able to have that conversation.
But can I say something? She brought that to the board as personal interest that she's working on outside the board. So I don't, whatever Mara wants to work on outside the board.
I'm actually, I thank you for the support, but I'm actually ironically going to push back a little bit. Because I was invited as a board member. I said these are the conditions in which I did it. I can do it. I then brought it to the board to let the board know. I did sit on a school board panel. I didn't say I'm representing the board, but I do sit there as somebody who sits on a board. Nobody came back to me at any point and said, don't do this. I'm not comfortable with it.
We didn't have our next board discussion. There
Well-
wasn't another board discussion before or in the middle.
In any case, nor did I ever get an email from anybody that said,
We're not supposed to.
we discussed it publicly. You can say,
But you did not represent
That's
any
it.
River County.
No.
You represented.
No, but she did represent it in River County.
well, I
She
sat on
said-
the board, I sat on a panel,
She did.
as somebody who sits on the Indian River County School Board, talking about equality issues. Generally, there was a board member from Miami-Dade, there was a board member from Duval, there was a board member from, I'm forgetting all of them, there were like Alachua. That said, I never went up and said, this is the policy that I'm going to insist that the district follow. I never said anything that. I never said I have directed the superintendent to do X, Y, or Z. I can't do that, nor would I. Where I'm going to actually ironically push back at your support is if a member of this board informed me that they were going, for example, to a KKK meeting, to a white supremacist meeting, to some meeting that I felt really strongly against, yeah, I would push back against that. I would expect that board member to represent themselves, to vocally acknowledge that in whatever way that they don't support the board, but I would expect that to be a conversation we would have. I did bring it to the board, and I would hope that board members would, and I would hope that we as a board, if we are not now, would be in a place where we can have rational conversations about this stuff. That's our job. That's our job, and we have to have those conversations publicly, and whether or not, there are many things that people on this board do or advocate that I don't. Okay, I don't. I am a member of a 6-person team. I'm a member of that team. And we have to operate as a team. And that doesn't mean that we avoid issues or because those issues may have conflict that we don't talk about it. I personally think conflict is a healthy thing.
You spoke about the LGBTQ movement being the civil rights movement of our day. And we know what the civil rights movement of the past with African American community members and Americans and what that civil rights movement looked like. So in the future, when we look at school boards around the country, schools, education sometimes is a political, minefield. And is sometimes used, and I think that there will be issues, and we have both acknowledged there will be issues coming up in the future in schools with policies and different things that are going to be questioned around this area. So I'm asking you, as a fellow board member, this was just one example. I think you did everything right. I didn't hear that you said anything wrong, that you misrepresented us. That was not the case at all. Please know that. But I just know that this is an issue that I hope in the future we're going to be able to have some rational conversations because the community will be divided on some issues. And, how do we as representatives work through that?
I'm sorry, because we do need to, I understand we're sidetracking. My bringing it up, my having been invited to do that, and my bringing it up to the board is for exactly that reason. We need to have those conversations. If we pretend those conversations don't exist, if we pretend that because there's divisiveness in the community we shouldn't have those conversations, we're doing a disservice to every child in this district and everybody who we purport to support in this district. So I would hope that we get to have those difficult conversations because I don't think we're doing our job if we're not having them.
I think the important thing in all of this is that you need to have the freedom and the freedom's not the right word, but
The respect to be able to express your opinions.
and to be able to bring that I've been invited to this board, to this panel, and I really would like to go, and I need to know your thoughts. And if somebody says they're not comfortable with it, then you don't take it personal, and you say that I will be going as Mara Schiff and not as representing the board. And when you get to the panel, you'd say, I am here, I am not representing my board today, I am representing my personal opinions, and it's set out there, and that's it.
But it's interesting, April, because just before you said you can never be separate. You're always an elected
It's
official.
different if she was saying that she's speaking for the board, and you hadn't had an opportunity to all agree with what she's saying. That's what I meant.
I hear what you're saying, but it contradicts. To a certain point, it contradicts all the other statements about separating, even social media, separating
If somebody comes
personal
up to
life
me
and our elected position, they're always the same. We are always the same.
Somebody comes up to me at a baseball game and asks me what the board's going to do about so-and-so. I don't know. We haven't had a chance to talk about that in public. I don't know what they're thinking. I haven't made my own decision. I haven't gotten all the facts. Boom, end of it. It's a difference than you say, well, this person is going to say that, and this person is going to say that, and that one, and that one, and I don't agree. And I know it's going to go through anyway because they don't listen to me.
So here's
That's where you can't say, speaking, I don't know.
Okay, so then that is, we are able to do that. We are able to attend events that we are invited to and be able to say, I am here as Jacqueline Rosario, mom or whatever, educator, I am not here representing the school board.
I just did it.
Okay.
If-
Well, that's
if-
what I was just going to bring up because last week, Tiffany went to the county commission office and
They had
I
a
had no idea.
frame this properly, they had a
Can I please-
workshop.
Can I please? Tiffany went to the county commission office and said that she was there as Tiffany Justice, as a wife and a mom, but that she is a school board elected official. And she was talking to them about the referendum.
I said I do not
For a
speak for the school
different-
board.
She said, I do
For the
not
school
speak to the
district.
school board, but half of everything that was mentioned was school board related. So it's very difficult for me to be able to separate those two because everything that was mentioned was how this particular referendum for a different organization would impact us or not. And so it really all related back to school board.
But this is the difference.
This is what I need.
She didn't
clarification.
stand up in front of them and say, I'm Tiffany Justice, the school board, one of your school board members and the board sent me to say this.
No, that's why I need
So
to be.
she's not
but
speaking for you. She stood up and she goes, my name is Tiffany Justice. I do serve on the school board, but today I'm here to speak to you as a parent. I'm here to speak to you as I'm not being sent here by the school district. That's different.
And I think you don't lose your right to be able to, it's regarding taxation, and it's that you don't lose your right to be a representative of the community, but I am an elected official, and some of the experience that I shared was because of, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with some organizations. I mean, I can't ever not be a school board member, but I was very clear about the fact that I was speaking on my own behalf, not on the school board of the district, and then I did come that night and let my school board members know that I had spoken. I asked them to view it, and if they had any questions or concerns, to bring them up.
I need to clarify.
Oh, no, I know you-
I don't disagree with what you said. I heard the whole thing. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just asking for April to clarify the difference because if we're going to be able to do that, then we have to be able to understand that everything else can be separate. And yet there are many things that April has said in other conversations, which is when you're a school board member, you can't separate those two.
It's
never two
exactly the
separate.
same. What I said is exactly the same. When you're elected, you're a school board member. When you're speaking, you have got to say, I'm speaking on behalf of the school board. If it's agreed, you're speaking on your own personal thing. Now, I don't know if you voted on this referendum. If you've already voted on it,
We have not.
I'm just saying, if you voted on it and one of you does not agree, it's a vote.
We haven't even discussed it yet.
Listen to what I'm saying. Once a decision has been made by the board, if you agree with it or you don't agree, it's your decision.
It's
You
not our
own it.
referendum. It's not our referendum, it's another referendum.
The point is not the referendum.
The point is, you can't say, I'm April Griffin here speaking on behalf of the board. I'm April Griffin as a parent. I'm still April Griffin, and whatever comes out of my mouth is going to be seen as April Griffin, the school board member. If I say, I'm April Griffin here speaking on behalf of the board, they have sent me, that means that I'm speaking for all of you. If I say, I'm April Griffin, the school board member, speaking on my own behalf. Whether they hear that or not, you said it. You can't say whatever you feel and whatever you think and people not assume that you're speaking as a school board member. Because you always know.
If I could clarify,
So that would-
you may not be speaking on behalf of the school board, you will always be perceived
As a
in your role as, you are
That's what
known
I'm
in the
saying.
community
Thank you.
as a school board member, irrespective
Thank
of
you.
whether you are speaking with that hat on or not, and we cannot divorce those things, and our
Right.
things will reflect on the board and on the district.
Yes.
It's 2 o'clock, so.
Absolutely.
We're going to wrap up. It is 2 o'clock. I want you to take these again, and I know you have another thing to go to. or here or whatever. This is what the 13 behaviors. And look over this list. We had what you were going to be working on last time, I'm just going to tell you. And I don't know if you've accomplished it, so you're probably still going to need to be working on it, is to demonstrate respect, create transparency, deliver results, confront reality, clarify expectations, listen first. And I think that some of the conversations we have had today have touched on some of these things. I think you're working on it. I think you still have some ways to go. And next time, we're going to start off with that to see where we are, because we did run out of time.
Do we have a next one?
Yes, we do. And
It's in April for the first meeting of the month, the second week of April.
yeah, it's April
14.
April 14th.
So we have April and you have May will be the last one.
If 10 o'clock is too late to start, because if you have something else after that, we can start earlier, and then you can have a little bit more break. It's up to you. Okay, and then your May is May 12th, and that will be your last one. May 12th is the last one. Okay? Now, if you have something that you feel like we need to talk about that's going to be productive, email me, and I'll see how we can work it in to the next session. Okay? Because I do want you to get out of this, something to take away. And if it's helping, if it's helping a little bit, it's better than it was. And so that's what, baby steps. So let's keep working on the baby steps. I appreciate y'all being here. We had some conversations that might not have happened if we weren't in this setting. So I'm glad about that. And I just want you to remember the quote that I said, that you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can change the ending. And focus on the end of this time together. We have the 2 more. And practice being hospitable and nice and having these conversations that you need to have. And I think that it'll get better. Okay. Break.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.